Little Summer Wells was a holler girl. She danced in the rain, she'd laugh and twirl. She lived a life so many holler girls know, living free but burdened by things hidden below. Secrets no little girl should have to hide. There may have been people she did confide. Too many things too about her innocent life. Things went wrong instead of gone right. Maybe people tried to protect her, but they were too late. Maybe those she trusted couldn't stop her fate. On a horrible June day, she just disappeared. It's a day most normal parents would always fear. But things went south in this Appalachian town. Police and searchers arrived and the hunt went down. The community cried and the dogs they searched. People gathered to pray in the community church. But there were no answers. The nights came without summer, and time went on too long without any sign of her. The YouTube dogs started getting on the prowl, and the community was faced with something far more foul. This little blonde holler girl got lost in the mix, while YouTube drama played evil games and tricks. The years kept passing without this girl being found, and we're all dying with horror and sending prayers around. Too many years without answers for little Summer. We want answers this year, and we won't wait for another. Those of us who care about children who are lost, keep praying she'll be found, and we don't care about the cost. Justice should be served for little Summer Wells. The guilty locked up, and those who know need to tell. We'll keep hoping and praying for a positive end to this tale. And in the end it should be known that no child is for sale. We stand for the victims and for justice to be served. And in the end, the guilty get the punishment they deserve.
Welcome everyone. To those new to our channel, that's how we do our intros. We've got some folks in the backstage here. Just real quick before I bring them on, I just want to express that intro, that video I actually put out for members only. I edited it slightly for this live. I hope it expresses how strongly we feel about this case, how much we want justice for Summer. Jen and I have been working on this case for 2 years. We're not OGs to the case. We have a lot of OGs working with us, and we've been working hard. Some new information, at least for us, came out today. We went to a Christmas tree event, and for the first time, we talked to the parents. We have not had the opportunity before. I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but we're focusing on the search, the canine search, the aspects of the case that where there was canine searches involved. We're also going to talk about, we're going to get a couple of experts here we have bringing in soon, Rachael Lockhart and Butch Mann. They have a lot of experience. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We're going to bring in Dan here from the DT show. He's taken us under his wing. He's about double the size of our channel, and he has really joined us with researching this case. We've helped him come up to speed on details, and he's giving us insight. So I'm going to bring our friends up here real quick. Let's see how this works. Here we go. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. That was a beautiful song and a beautiful intro. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Rachael and Butch, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm beyond ecstatic to have you guys on our show finally, live. It's been too long.
Yes, and it's a lot of work just to get everybody on the same page.
Yes, it is. For those you who don't know, and if you haven't seen it, we have video from spring in 2025 where we went up to Pennsylvania and joined Rachael and Butch in their American Working Dog Association seminar. It was a 3-day event where they deeply train. There's police canines, there's independent canine teams. These two, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a little bit, have a level of experience beyond anyone I've met. There's a lot of people I met during the Helene disaster who did have some canine experience. These two have been doing this for so long. They've done so much work. They're on call constantly for 911. They cover the entire state of Pennsylvania. They've done across the country searches. But before we get into that, let me just share my screen real quick. I've got everything lined up tonight, queued up, so I should be able to share pretty easily. I'm not as expert at this as Dan. Dan is much better at doing things up, but I'm going to do my best.
Thank you.
So Dan, why don't you go ahead for people who are new to your channel? I forgot to add in the description the channel link, but I did put it. I tagged you in the title. But could you introduce people to your channel, your background, what you do?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, my name's Daniel. I'm called Danny, all and above. And I have a show called the DT Show. We cover a lot of true crime and missing persons. It's something that I've here recently started to really start to cover. I have a experience in law enforcement. I was a police officer for about 8 to 9 years, quite a while ago, out here in Texas. And so, it's been some time, so I know that and I understand that technology has changed some bit, but investigating and talking to people and things of that nature never does. And so I've kind of implemented that into the true crime coverage that we do. And we've covered cases like the Brian Koberger case out in Idaho, where I've actually interviewed Kaylee Gonsalves's parents on a couple of different occasions. Kaylee Gonsalves is one of the victims of Brian Koberger's. We've covered the Timothy Dees case. He was a missing person who ended up being found under mysterious circumstances, deceased. And we've worked with his mom about his death, and talking here recently about Jack and Lily, and also Summer Wells. And so a lot of, it's a sad story and a lot of similarities between the two missing kids case. And, I just find it interesting, the information and how much information that is out there when it comes to these cases. And I hope that we can, that I can at least explain a few things from a law enforcement perspective, so to speak.
I'll tell you, Dan, that aspect, talking about the details of the Summer Wells case, as you're asking me questions and I'm sending information to you, getting your feedback has been really helpful, because I don't have a law enforcement background. I don't know how cops look at these things and the different aspects of the case. And so you've definitely altered my understanding of a lot of things that have happened. So I appreciate that a great deal. This partnership, this collaboration has just been a blessing for us. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's been great for me as well. I've appreciated y'all's input and knowledge into this case. That's really helped catch me up. I'm still light years behind everybody, but I'm trying.
You're catching up a lot faster than most. I have to tell you, you're catching up fast. And for those, I forgot to introduce myself. For those who are new to our channel, Jen and I started out as hikers. We're like a nature channel, really. It was mostly me hiking. And I have a deep background in research. 10 years before I even started YouTube, I was doing a lot of conspiracy theory debunking and deep research, so much to the point that a producer actually reached out to me to be on the History Channel at one point. I don't even know if I told you that, Dan. I was on it was a Utah Mormon underground vault case that I'd researched, and I ended up on the History Channel. They flew me to New York. It was crazy. So my background is really deep research and understanding kind of how to not fall on the side of a conspiracy theory, or follow the truth. And the truth being, always get multiple sources, always vet your sources, make sure they're reliable, all that kind of stuff. So research is my thing. Investing, not to the point of like what I'm learning from you is how police look at investigation and research. So that's been really helpful for me. That's where we are. We started covering the Summers case a couple years after originally she went missing, and then we ended up really starting to realize that searching for missing people and working with missing persons' families is our passion, and we started trying to be better at it by doing things like getting certifications on. I have my drone, commercial drone certification. My background is engineering, electrical engineering. I love technology, so I'm incorporating technology like wire cameras. I can get into crevices and underwater drones, underwater cameras, all that kind of stuff. I love using technology to try to increase the odds of finding the missing. Then we got Moon, and this is where Rachael and Butch come in, because we got this dog, and I met Butch, the man you can see on the bottom here on the right side. He was doing what he does. He was in the Hurricane Helene, one of the key searchers, the canine searchers. For those who are local, Butch was very active there was a plant that got flooded, a plastics plant that got flooded in Erwin. And I can't remember how many people. I did a video on it. I'm sorry. There were a number of employees that got swept away in those floods. Butch took part in the FEMA search. They had him take part in the canine part of the searches. He assisted with finding the missing, a number of those missing in the piles of just junk.
Rachel and I both were down there for quite a while.
Rachael and Butch both were down working with FEMA on identifying the piles that were of interest. And I believe they contributed to. Is the lamp disturbing people? Okay, I'll turn it off. Yeah, they were contributed to finding a number of those people. I met Butch. We were researching a team, canine team, I'm going to put that in quotes, who were helping to search for Stephen Cloyd. My conspiracy research came in that situation because I was digging into this group who I got indications they were scammers. And I came across Butch, who they were using as a way to make themselves look legitimate. And so I interviewed Butch, and I will say Butch and I saved each other. I saved Butch from that situation. I exposed the fact that this group was scam artists. He was extremely thankful because they were using his name to make themselves credible. And then in turn, he invited us to this conference, and he's been helping us train Moon to the level of someone with him and Rachael have been helping us train Moon to a level we couldn't even ask for, like for free. They've just been contributing to helping us train her, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. They've helped us so much. Butch or Rachael, if either of you, whichever of you want to talk about, let me bring up your real quick before you start. Let me bring up your Facebook page. Oh shoot. Just so people see the amount. I'm going to show them the photos as you're talking, because I want them to see just the amount of work that you all do. Is that it? There we go. Either of you, could you introduce, just let everyone know kind of your background, and the amount of searches you do and what you do.
Oh, the background. Well, both in law enforcement, as you know, and if there's some people watching that have seen the videos and part of the seminar, they'll know that as well. But we do everything from, fire departments calling us out, local police, state police. We've done stuff with the FBI, and we have, of course, police dogs, and we train in everything from bomb detection to narcotics to live finds, recovery, and everything else. So, there's a lot of years, and we train as often as we can, but right now it's like single digits and very cold. We still can do stuff, and it's fun in the snow. As I was telling you, Ryan, some different things that we can do in the snow, and people are just blown away at what we do without an article or anything.
Yep.
And we're both professional dog trainers too on the side.
You're also dog trainers on the side.
Yep.
Yes.
Holy cow. Okay. I don't know how you guys keep up. That's amazing.
You heard the expression about a cat on a tin roof in the middle of July on a hot summer day, right?
Yeah. So I told you, Butch, I warned you about this question. So, I'm going to ask you this question. It's kind of, I realized how stupid it was to ask this question. It's like asking someone who works with law enforcement how many times a day they arrest someone. But how many cases would you say you and Rachael, you're on 911, you're on call? How many, if you can estimate the number of recoveries you made of remains when you've been called over the years, how many would you say roughly?
Since I've started,
Yeah.
probably in the hundreds.
Hundreds of recoveries.
And that's counting, Helene and Kerrville really helped us. I don't want to say helped us because that's bad, but bolstered the numbers.
Yeah, the experience, the
And
amount of experience. Yeah.
a lot of times we don't know that it's a true find. And let me reiterate this. I saw so much BS from Helene about people saying the find when the dog had a lot of interest in the pile. That's not a find. That's interest or an indication. We do not know until they excavate that debris pile. Then once it's confirmed, then you get, yes, it's a find.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I have had a lot of conversations about the scam artists and the people on YouTube who are making claims of the finds, and yeah, I know it's a frustration for you, the fake people out there who are kind of pretending to have that level of experience in collecting money. So I get your frustration.
And it's just mind boggling because we don't do any of this for money, nothing. We would like and ask for our expenses to get paid because it's extremely expensive, because we're usually taking anywhere from 4 to 5 canines with us. And to stay, for example, when Rachel and I went, uh, Bart Ray actually called from Erwin and asked if we had dogs that would do live find or recovery. And to give people an idea, when FEMA comes in, they block hotels for their staff and, rehoming people or whatever. But we had to stay in Bristol, Tennessee and drive. I think it's over an hour. You can correct me, Ryan, but we were getting up, between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning because we had to be at muster by 0700. And then we were on Interstate 26 right across from the plastic plant. And we worked till 5:36, was it?
Give or take.
And then we had to, go over, critique, whatever, and then drive all the way back to Bristol, take care of the dogs, rinse them off, whatever we had to do, try to get some sleep, load 5 dogs back up, and you still have to feed them, water them, take them out to pee and stuff. So you got like 2-3 hours of sleep every day. And you're just doing this over and over and over again. And it cost, what was it a night that I had to pay for the team to stay there? Like a couple hundred, 300 or something. I can't remember what it was, but we eat those costs. So
I know. Yeah, I know. And we've talked about this at the seminar. We've talked about how much you guys do. And a lot of it you guys don't make profit. It's out of pocket. You're just doing that. You're helping families find their missing. And it's just, by the way, I do want to say real quick, we did put the Rachael and Butch's link in our description. If you go down to the bottom, there's a Venmo. I don't do that for just anybody, but you don't understand how hard these two work. And a lot of times they will take on a case. They've offered to come down and help us with Layla Santinello, Summer Wells. They've offered to come down, and they don't charge anything for families. So any of you willing, if you have the resources, please hit that link and send them anything to help out with what they do, because you don't understand what they do is national, and they work so hard. They do it for the passion of helping families. They really do. I know that about them, and Jen and I love the two of you so much. You're our heroes. You are our heroes.
I don't know about experts and heroes, but we do whatever we can. And, you know, the other thing I want to add is like when we train, it either her or I will come up with an idea. If it sounds like the stupidest, craziest idea, and I'm sure Dan knows from his law enforcement background because there's inside jokes in law enforcement. If you can think it and you think, oh, I never tried that in training, or we never did this when we certified, then you try it to see what comes out of it. It may be something totally stupid, or you may learn a new technique and think, oh, okay, this is a lot easier, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
And you poke fun about it and you laugh about it, but you're like, damn, that was easy. That's really going to help us out in the future.
Yeah. Yep. So what we're going to get into here tonight, by the way, Will, what I'm trying to do is the years of experience you all have, and I'm trying to combine that with the law enforcement experience that Dan has, working with canine teams, not directly being a canine person, but you know, he's run cases and he's done investigations that required canine teams. So we're going to look at the Summer Wells case from the perspective, taking input from what you all think and what Dan thinks. I want to combine those two, and I'm going to show you guys. And Dan, we're going to get into an area. There's some topics here you and I haven't covered yet, so there may be some opportunities you and I later on. Maybe we can dive deeper, do some more research. There's some things I want to talk about with you offline too, but I'm gonna go a little further than we've gone before in our past live. All right. And the first thing I want to do, you guys, for Rachael and Butch, I'm going to play Sheriff Lawson. Sheriff Lawson is the Hawkins County Sheriff. He's covered the Summer Wells case. He was talking in this clip I'm going to share about a scent trail at Summer Wells' house. And he makes a comment about his observation of the scent and the scent dogs. Okay, so I'm going to play out of context because I want you guys to see only what he said. And this is going to be important later as we look at what other persons of interest say about where the dogs went. All right. So, and the reason I'm doing this is because when I watched, they've used the sheriff's comment to debunk other things in the case. And as I watched it, it dawned on me that the lingo he used is lingo I've heard you guys use at the seminar. Okay, so it's fascinating to me that I think a lot of people out there don't realize how dog teams talk and the lingo they use, and Sheriff Lawson uses that lingo. And I may be wrong, but I want to play this little clip for you out of context, and you all tell me, you guys tell me what you think he's saying in this video here.
Okay.
All right. It is, let me make sure I get the right clip. 255 to 312. Okay, here we go. Turn the sound up. Here we go.
Yes. The dogs had a pretty good trail, a track for a little while, but then it disappeared. But they lost scent when they come to the road. And sometimes canines, they will lose the scent when it changes different type, whether it maybe went from the gravel to the pavement.
And did
Okay, I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play that again. Listen to his exact wording, okay?
yes.
The dogs had a pretty good trail, a track for a little while, but then it disappeared. But they lost scent when they come to the road. And sometimes canines, they will lose the scent when it changes different type, whether it maybe went from the gravel to the pavement.
And did
Okay, so you guys are already laughing. So if a sheriff comes to you and he makes that comment, what does that mean to you?
I think he needs to call American Working Dog Association, and because, and no disrespect to you, Sheriff, I appreciate everything. We're brother in arms, but we have, when we certify, we have to cover a minimum of 3 surfaces. But we try to do 4: gravel, hard roads for a distance, which you know, because that's when Jackie pulled her thigh muscle, Ryan.
But hold on. We're going to get to that. I promise you. I know, because, you know, we've talked offline about the training, but I'm talking about his words. When he says the dogs followed the trail, the track down to the road. What's the trail, the track mean to you specifically? If a sheriff comes to you and says, yeah, the dogs followed the trail, what does that mean to you?
He's following the scent of whatever the scent article they used.
The scent trail.
Mm-hmm.
The scent trail, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's important. People don't realize, and I'm going to show you another clip and how people misinterpreted what Ronnie Lawson was saying. He said the trail, the track. You picked up on it immediately. You, as canine experts, you know when someone says a dog's following the trail or the track, it's the scent. I heard you guys say scent trail so many times at that seminar. The scent trail, the scent trail. So now I'm going to give you the context. Okay, and this was to me the moment when I heard his comments been used to debunk so many things because people thought he was talking specifically about a trail, not scent trail, but a trail. So let me show you the full context now. Let's see. 2:16:16. I'm backing up. I'm showing you the whole video so you guys can see the full context and you'll see how people can misinterpret things. This video came out at the beginning of the case pretty early on, and people have misinterpreted his comment. It's crazy to me. All right, let's share this and take a look at this. This is the full context so you understand where I'm going here.
Kidnapping, telling me a neighbor likely heard Summer scream.
I think whoever grabbed her probably had her mouth.
Sorry, 2:16.
Kidnapping, telling me a neighbor likely heard Summer scream.
I think whoever grabbed her probably had her mouth covered, and I think she was gasping for air by the time she got down through here somewhere because our neighbor heard a scream, a really funny scream. I think they just carried her to a vehicle and threw her in there and took her somewhere far away from here.
Hawkins County Sheriff Ronnie Lawson has not publicly commented on specifics of the case until now.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get the right timing. What he's doing. Don was showing people. Then you can see here he's showing the reporter. He believes that Summer was taken from the basement of the house down the dog trail, and this is where they're standing right now. And he led the reporter down the dog trail to the road. And in our last live, when Daniel and I did a live, my first question was, and I'm curious what you guys think, the back of the house, do they show it in here? The back of the house is not far from this entrance to what they call the dog trail down to the road. Okay. So the concept here is someone was at the basement door of Summer's house, got her and brought her down this dog trail to the road. The question I asked Dan, and we weren't sure because Dan had said in the live, he doesn't have experience with handling dogs, so he's not 100% sure. He thought possibly yes. The question I asked is if someone is picked up, someone's picked up outside, let's say the back door of their house, and carried down the dog trail. Later on, if law enforcement's brought in, they're given a scent article. Can they trace someone even if they're carried?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Easy. In fact, this is going to open up a can of worms.
That's okay.
But if an individual is abducted, a dog can follow that vehicle that person was abducted in. And the reason I say that is we've practiced that a lot. When Zeusy did it, what'd he do? A mile and a half, 2 miles to find the subject, because we do drive off. We call them drive offs. And yeah, we practice that a lot because you just never know what you're going to get into. And it comes back to the same thing. If you think it, do it. That's the dog world. A lot of people do this as a hobby. This is a lifestyle. And what I'd really like to do is ask you, was this interview before with Dawn, before the sheriff he knew what the sheriff was saying about the dog's lost scent, or was after? Because I'd like to hear that interview he did with the reporter again.
So people saw this interview, and then I'll show it. The reporter actually talked to Don first, then talked to Ronnie Lawson, and I'll show you the whole thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. This will give you the full. This is what happened.
Down through here till the police dogs followed it all the way to the road.
Will says he overheard authorities say search dogs followed Summer's scent down the trail to the road before losing it. He painted a vivid picture of a kidnapping, telling me a neighbor likely heard Summer scream.
I think whoever grabbed her probably had her mouth covered, and I think she was gasping for air by the time she got down through here somewhere, because our neighbor heard a scream, a really funny scream. I think they just carried her to a vehicle and threw her in there and took her somewhere far away from here.
Hawkins County Sheriff Ronnie Lawson has not publicly commented on specifics of the case until now. I asked Sheriff Lawson about Wells' claims. Did dogs follow Summer's scent down the trail to the main road? The sheriff says yes.
The dogs had a pretty good track for a little while, but then it disappeared. But they lost scent when they come to the road. And sometimes canines, they will lose the scent when it changes different type, where they maybe went from the gravel to the pavement.
And did a neighbor hear a scream?
Does that help a little with the context?
Yes. I think Dan will agree with me. I mean, I don't know how much you and him have talked behind the scenes, but just listening to that interview, there's a lot of things that I would like to ask questions on.
Of course.
Because there's certain things that you listen for, and I think Dan will confirm this. When somebody's talking, certain keywords or key things that they say, and you're like, oh, okay, let's rehearse this in your head, and you go there, and it's like, I don't want to get into too much detail, but you hear certain things, and it's like, okay, that's why I wanted that video played again.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do have a couple questions for you guys. One is, how would Summer being barefoot affect the scent? Would it make it, and her being barefoot and the scent disappearing, what does that tell you guys?
you mean, are you using the situation of it disappeared on the road?
Correct. That was the term that the sheriff used, that it disappeared on the road.
Yeah.
If that's the case and she's barefoot, and I know you said that you can even, track some folks into a vehicle. Well, it doesn't sound like they were able to track a vehicle taking off. It sounds like the trail stopped hard at the roadway. She was described as being barefoot. I would assume being barefoot would probably make the trail a lot stronger. For it to have disappeared, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that maybe she was in a larger vehicle, something much higher off the ground? They sped away faster. What would that tell you?
Depending on what breed of dogs they use too, I noticed in the video they had hounds. Hounds put their nose pretty much to the ground. They're not very air scent dogs. So if I had to assume that she got put into a vehicle, hounds stick their nose to the ground. They're not checking the air. Now, him and I, we have German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Golden Retrievers. They do a lot of wherever they're finding the strongest scent. So I'm going to assume she got into a vehicle, and I'm going to assume that the hounds, like I said, I just saw the clip and I just see hounds working, that they're not trained to work
On multiple surfaces.
on multiple surfaces and way.
So Rachel, just to be fair, the video that they were showing just now, believe those were Dawn's dogs. Those weren't the actual search dogs. So you know the full picture. So I don't know what kind of dogs they use, to be honest. I have not. If anybody in the chat knows, specific dogs they use, that would help Rachel and Butch probably understand a little better about the scent stopping at the road. But that's a good point, Rachel. It depends on the type of dog, right?
Yes.
Yes, that helps a lot because, like I said, nothing wrong with bloodhounds. They're great, and a lot of departments use hounds. But if you ever watch a hound work, their nose is to the ground. They don't really ever put their nose up in the air and say, okay, the child was put into a vehicle. Well, now there's no more trail on the ground. There, you need a dog that can air scent the air
Mhm.
to get the smell.
A German Shepherd from Greenville. Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead, Dan.
Would the height make a difference? Like if they were in a vehicle, like a car, versus like a bigger utility truck? I know there was some tree trimmers in the area. If they were put in a vehicle that was elevated, could that affect the dog's ability to scent? Okay.
No, and like I said, it's no disrespect to anybody's dog. You know, hounds are good, whatever. And if they use the Greenville police dog, if I was the sheriff, I would be questioning the program certification programs that they use because, as you know, Ryan, we have to do those surfaces to pass our certification.
Yep.
And there's also that would tell me that how much do they train in urban settings on, because in urban is you have to do the sidewalks, the buildings and everything. Because if you get somebody shooting at you, and I'm sure Dan would agree with this, if you get somebody shooting at you or somebody that beats the snot out of somebody and you call K9 in, they better be able to darn well track that person on cement, asphalt or whatever, because you hardly have any grass in an urban setting unless it's a small yard or something.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. And we get deep into so Dan and I had a discussion without you guys the other night in our live where I made the comment like, wait, it stopped cold at the road. Now, does that mean that the Rachel just made the comment, she would probably assume the person was thrown in a car or the scent disappeared. And Michelle After Dark, and I'm gonna ask you guys. I put Michelle After Dark's channel in the description. I love her to death. She's very fact focused. She's an excellent researcher. I love her channel. She also claims, and she does know a lot about dogs. Everyone who follows her, she's got her dogs trained to follow scent articles, meaning she can find a hat. She can find she's having her dogs find, you know what I mean, Butch, find person's things. But she made some comments in her response to Dan and I, and my comment that it just stopped cold at the road, that I'm like, and again, I respect her. I think she does know a lot about dogs. She messed up in this comment. You're going to see why. I know she messed up because of the training you guys have given us and what I know from you guys about dogs and concrete surfaces. I'm going to play her clip for you, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I just want to say to Michelle, if you're watching this isn't a diss toward you. This is Butch and Rachel love when people who know a lot about dogs come to these seminars, because Butch has always told me, if you ever get to the point where you think you know everything about dogs, you're wrong. Everyone, even Butch tells me he always has the next level to learn. Everyone has the next level to learn. So I'm hoping this discussion tonight can be educational for everyone about the truth, about how dogs behave on different surfaces. For Rachel and Butch, I want to play this clip from Michelle. It's a little long, but it's her response to our live. And I talked a little bit about this with you, Butch, the other night, just to get your take on it. And I got your response on the phone a little bit, but we're going to dive a little deeper into this. This is Michelle's response to our discussion. And then we'll have a discussion about her comments right after that. Here we go.
Okay, without further ado, this is towards the end of this live stream, and there's a little conversation going on about search dogs. We've talked a lot about search dogs on this channel, not just in this case, but across different cases. And Sheriff Ronnie Lawson did say, and they play the clip in this live stream, dogs tracked Summer Scent from the hill down to the road. That's where we're going to start.
I remember hearing about how the dogs tracked Summer from the house area down to the road, and then it stopped at the road. And we recently have started training our dog, and we went to a seminar, and I thought like an idiot, like, well, it's a road, it's concrete, the dog can't smell on concrete. Well, I found out that's not true. Dogs are trained on like several surfaces. They can even track through water. It's a myth that they can't track through water. So I'm like, no, if she had walked on the road, they would have been able to follow her, which means her trail stopped cold at the road.
Not quite. Not quite. Yes, of course, dogs can track on concrete. They can track on a whole bunch of different surfaces, including, if they're trained to do so, in water. But there's a lot of caveats. And I've said this again and again and again and again. When a dog is trained to man trail, to follow someone's scent, all you're doing is tapping into their natural instinct. Why are they good at tracking? Well, it's to find prey. So if they smell something on the wind that smells like food running around, they air scent until they get a direction and they follow that direction. At some point, they're going to get their nose down and they're going to be hot on that trail. And that scent gets stronger and stronger the closer to the prey they get. Of course, it's obvious. But when a dog is man trailing, when a dog is following someone's scent because it's trained to do so, it's been given a scent, and in this case, Summer Wells' scent, they're still going to be assuming, because it's their natural instinct to think this, that the scent is going to get stronger and stronger. Now, here's the rub. If a dog is tracking on a natural surface, as they would be if they went down the dog trail from the top of the hill to Ben Hill Road, or even on the driveway. So even though the driveway is an artificial surface, there's a lot of mud on it, there's grass down the sides of it, that scent is going to linger there, and the scent is going to get stronger until it hits the concrete road. And then what happens? The scent might still be there, but it's weaker. That confuses the dog, because in their brain, they're assuming that the scent is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. It doesn't matter how well trained they are. That's their natural instinct, to follow that trail in the direction of travel, because that scent is getting stronger. But once it hits the concrete road, that scent gets weaker, because the scent dissipates so much quicker on artificial surfaces like concrete. So although there might still be scent there lingering around, depending on how long ago the person passed by, it's going to confuse the dog and they're going to stop. Now, what a good handler will do is they will restart the dog. So give it a little break and restart the dog at that point. So it's already starting from a point where the scent is weak. It's not going from a strong scent to a weak scent, which is confusing. They're already starting it from a place where that scent is weak, and they'll see whether they can pick up that trail again. Now,
so I gotta tell you, Butch, I was trying hard not to chuckle watching your reaction as you're listening to this. You guys go ahead. You've got the floor. Tell me what you think about that analysis.
Okay, right where you stopped the video and she's saying restart the dog at the surface. No, because it could be highly contaminated and you could have had a critter go over it. Because you remember back, I don't know, you were with some of the newbies at the seminar. What can happen, and it does happen to new people or even some handlers, when you start a dog over, we always say go back to the last point of interest or whatever, okay? But she's saying start the dog over right there. I highly and respectfully disagree, because it's heavily contaminated. And if somebody just spit on the ground, that dog's going to pick that odor up and go find that person, because it's the freshest, hottest scent. And the dogs, like I keep saying, and that if it's a good trailing or tracking dog, it's going to stay on that scent, whether it comes to cement, asphalt, or whatever, because it's still a porous surface and it's going to get trapped in the little tiny fissures or whatever. And our dogs just keep going. I don't know.
Now, if it gets weaker, have you guys had your dogs get confused and you have to restart them?
We do, but what we do is take them back, like I said, to the last point of good interest, or we do resent them. But it's not a whole lot that we have to resent them. Now, in the beginning stages when they're younger and stuff, yeah, because you're trying to hone your craft in with that specific dog. But these dogs that we have, you tell them find it, get out of their way, because they're on a mission.
When you say these dogs, you mean the type of dogs that we would be brought in a situation like this? Experienced dogs in a missing child case. Okay. Dan, is that your experience when you've covered, I don't know how many missing persons cases you covered, but when dogs are called in, is it typically pretty experienced? Like, do they go after people who are new or have more experience with handling dogs, especially missing child cases? What do you think?
With well, that was actually some of the questions I was going to ask them is how ready and available are some of these dogs? Because I know there's different types of dogs, right? There's an air scent dog, and then there's a dog that can track a specific scent. In my experience where I was at, the dogs that we were able to call in were more on the air scent type. They were looking for because typically, like if somebody went missing, like in a rural area, there's not a lot of human beings out there, and so they're looking for a smell that's out of place, from what I understand. And I found it interesting that they had those type of dogs that could track scent ready and available, or maybe it's just because in my experience it's not something that is ready and available, because where I was in law enforcement was out in a rural area out in West Texas, so it was a little bit different. But my experience when they've utilized dogs, we had the ones that were looking for suspects more so than missing persons. The missing persons that I've gone in, that we've had, one of them, I searched the river that was in the middle of town. A little boy had gotten lost, and we ended up finding the body several miles down the road. We didn't use dogs in that search yet. And we had a couple of other ones that were in the neighborhood type of stuff, nothing out in a rural area like that per se. But we did have some in the county that did, and I'm aware of some of their stuff, but not fully. But my questions are, like, how ready and available are these type of dogs? Is it more common to have an open air scent dog ready and available? Is that because of funding and things? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
It's like a 50-50.
Yeah, it depends on the area. Like where our area is, there's a lot of more tracking dogs. There's only like maybe a handful of air scent dogs, and depending on how the air scent dogs are trained, my air scent dogs are trained to even without a scent article, because when somebody's missing or running from the cops or anything like that, your body's producing different hormones and it's coming out of your body, and the dogs can sense that. So my dogs can do it without a scent article, or with a scent article, and where they're smelling the scent article of the missing person or even the person running off, and you put it to their nose and they're like, okay, this is the scent I need to follow. So honestly, it just depends on the area. Like I said, in this area, I feel like there's more tracking dogs. There's maybe a handful of air scent dogs in our area.
And
Yeah, well, yeah. And with what Dan said, and this ties back into the comment that she had made about the scent being weaker or whatever with the police canine. When you call a police canine in from a suspect, say you have a felony pursuit, or somebody bails on you, that canine better be able to track on asphalt or road. And you start there a lot of times and then end up in a field or woods. So it's totally reversed.
So
So that
let's go down that road, Butch. And actually, Butterfly Kiss has just made a really good comment. I haven't even thought about this, and I don't even know what to think. I'm curious what you guys think about this. Wow. Let's say someone goes from a house down to a road, they're alive. Well, my first question is, and this is kind of where Dan was going earlier too, with the type of teams brought in. In your experience, you guys respond to 911 calls constantly. If there's a missing child, the day she went missing, do you think the dogs that are brought in, are they typically trained on both live tracking and HRD?
no.
Just live tracking?
Yeah.
Majority, yeah.
Okay. So if the person was unalived, let's say this scenario where she was running after her dog, ran down a trail, got hit. How would the dog, who's a live tracking dog, how would that play out, do you think?
They'd still find the person and tell us. Our dogs are dual purpose trained in that stuff.
Because the reason that is when somebody's running down a trail, they're alive, and then they get hit. Okay, so depending on how quickly they call dogs in, too, kind of makes you decide, okay, which dog, what was the situation, what happened, how many hours has this person been missing. There's a lot of different situations, and you have to then decide, okay, do I want to put a cadaver dog out there or a live find dog out there? And say if it was within an hour, there's still a live find scent. Now, if you're going on a couple days and you're like, I'm going to pull out a cadaver dog instead, depending on the situation and what's going on.
But like what you and I,
This situation we're talking about, though, was on the 15th. They brought dogs out, and I think what I'm understanding from you guys is most likely they brought out live tracking.
Mm-hmm.
I would
How would a live tracking dog behave if she got unalived at the road, do you think? And she was swept away in a car, for example.
Oh, okay. You mean all in the same day, same time frame?
Let's
Like-
say that afternoon she ran down the trail, got hit, was unalived, put in a car, and now you've got a live tracking dog at the house starting at where she started. Would it just disappear at the road? Would that be the scenario?
Not necessarily, because if somebody is taken, we'll use that, or unalived, whatever. I don't want to say anything YouTube, but if it was the same clothes and stuff, the dog still would have some interest, because if they give the scent article, but then it's possible, there's a lot of hypotheticals and what ifs, because we don't know how they train their dogs in different situations. What we do. It could go right from our dogs, could go right from, okay, this is a track. Now we're going into recovery mode.
That's the thing too. And I know you guys, your dogs are trained on multiple disciplines. So you've got live tracking and cadaver. And you've told me many times, Butch, you're like, my dog may be doing live tracking, but if it smells the HRD, it's going to go after it. So it's like, it's hard to know. And that's why Dan and I keep asking, in a scenario like this, if there's a child missing, what's the typical type of, do you think that law enforcement's dogs are typically like your dogs, where they're trained in multiple disciplines?
No, not real. The majority of them are not.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't know the background of the dog that they used. It could have been a drug canine that was trained and certified to find missing people or track suspects. And that's usually the end of their training. But with what we have, we have the bomb dog, the drug dogs, tracking dogs, recovery dogs, whatever. And we if we get called, the first thing for a situation like this, unless it's a law enforcement incident, first thing we do is we take one of the dogs that's certified to do live find and recovery at the same time, because it's like, oh Lord, you get out there. I don't want to have to go back home, but we usually do take one of the police dogs with us as well.
And also this, depending on the department and what they have their dogs trained for, most of the time when a law enforcement canine comes in, they're just trained either in narcotics and tracking and protection if they do multiple things.
Yeah.
So because for I'm trying to wade through the water here. Because the reason why that is most law enforcement, what they're going to use their canines for drug work, they can't mix a dog that's been trained in narcotics and do HRD.
Or explosives, because you get called into court. The
And
first thing they're going to do is they're going to try to pick it apart and say, oh, what's the indication for your drug alert to sit? Okay, when your dog finds a cadaver, what's it going to do? Oh, it's going to sit. Or if it finds an explosive, it's going to sit. Guess what? Dan will tell you, first thing that the defense attorney is going to say, immediate dismissal.
that's why, like with our dogs, I don't know if you noticed, like we had our police canines that were, what were they? They were just tracking, protection, and narcotics. Our more like our search and rescue canines are what? Live find and HRD.
Right.
So depending on and what kind of canine they used, I'm going to assume that it was just a department dog. So I'm going to assume it's only trained in live find and possibly might be dual purpose with narcotics and protection, but
So
depending on the department.
that makes sense. So Dan, what you just said earlier is kind of aligning with what they're saying. Like in your experience, they'll bring in the type of dog that's necessary for the situation. If you're searching for a person, you're going to bring in that kind of dog that's specially trained for that, right?
Right, exactly. And, you know, resources and things of that nature play a pivotal role in that, as they're mentioning. You know, when it comes to tracking dogs, from what I understand, in this case, is they use laundry. Could, you know, how could that affect the scent? You know, if it was mixed in with other people's clothing, could that have had an effect on the trail the dogs were on?
Excellent question.
Yes. What we typically do, and I stress this, and Rachel will tell you, they'll say go in and gather the scent article. No, number one, you can't do that. I give them a gown Ziploc bag, rubber gloves, and two objects I really ask for are their socks, the missing socks, or their underwear, because that's where your most odor is going to be. Or
So
then
Butch, in this situation, what Dan brought up is something we learned when we were talking about this, is that they pulled it out of the laundry, mixed laundry with like socks with other people in the family. Is that a problem?
it very well can be. It almost has to be. I don't want to say sterile, because then people may get the wrong idea, but it has to be. In that case, I would have said, if it come out of the laundry, I would have said, take these rubber gloves and go get me her pillowcase.
Mm-hmm.
Pillowcase.
Mm-hmm.
It's dedicated to her scent alone. Yeah, that makes sense.
For bed sheets, something that is like hers, where there's no ifs, buts, or what's about it. It's hers and it's her scent. And depending on how they handle the scent article too, you have to make sure you're rubbered, gloved up, and everything. So then you're not transferring your scent onto whatever the scent article could be.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. What I'm gonna move on a little bit. There's been a question in this case. So you just saw the video of Don showing the news reporter that Summer went down a dog trail, what he calls a dog trail, which is like through the woods, hard to walk down, and it goes down to the road. Now there's another person who was involved in the searches in the early days. His name is Dave Rader. He's the operations director of EquiSearch, very well-respected organization. They've done a lot of searches. They took part in the Summer Wells search. He described where the scent trail ended. and it differed from where Dawn said the scent trail ended. And I thought it did. I thought it did. I'm going to share with everyone today. We went to a Christmas tree, missing persons Christmas tree event at the mall today in Kingsport. And Dawn Wells and Candace showed up. They were there. First year I've ever gone to this, they actually showed up. Dawn, this is the first time I've ever talked to him. He walked up to me and he said, "Hey, Ryan," and he shook my hand. I had an opportunity to talk to him for about 30 to 40 minutes. And I asked him about this scenario because I was confused. I didn't want to come on tonight and say Dawn Wells lied by saying that the scent trail ended at the road when Dave Rader, you'll see, I'm going to show you this clip in a second. Dave Rader said it ended at the bottom of the driveway. There's two different stories in this scenario where Summer disappeared. Dave Rader says end of the driveway. Dawn Wells says end of the dog trail at the road. But you're talking about 100 feet difference. Dawn Wells, I talked to him about 30 to 40 minutes today, and he helped clarify and put it together. But I want to show you the confusion I had. And people have debunked Dave Rader, saying he's wrong and that it was actually the dog trail. Let me show you what Dave Rader said in an interview. He was on Duty Ron's channel, which is fantastic, by the way. Duty Ron is awesome. He's very similar to Dan. He's former law enforcement, and he has a really close connection with EquiSearch. They do a lot of lives together. I want to share you guys what Dave Rader said he observed when he was on the ground at the house and what he observed the dogs did. This may give you guys a little more insight too into what was going on that day. Let's see right here. And I almost am as much of a fanboy of Dave Rader as I am of you guys. Not quite as much. I think I'm your biggest fanboy, but I'm just saying it's a fantastic organization. I love what EquiSearch does. This is what Dave Rader said about his observations of that day.
I was there.
You know, Dave, so the folks are going to ask, there's different types of dogs, bloodhounds, there's cadaver dogs. What all manner of dogs working this scene?
Yeah, they were actually using live track, and they were also using cadaver. From what I understand, they could not get a very good.
Actually, did you guys just hear that? They were using both that day. That's interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They were using dogs trained in both live tracking and cadaver.
So yes, at that point, then the police already had a hunch of there could have been something.
Right.
That's what I was about to say.
Isn't that interesting? That's just okay. Let's listen to him.
Sent article from the house for Summer because I think that everything was kind of shared. So I'm not too sure how well that played out, but they did use cadaver, and they also used live track, and not one of them took us in any one direction.
So was it confirmed, Dave, that they did bring in multiple dogs into the home and outside of the home? Because there's been reports that some dogs got the scent to the end of the road of the house, and then it stopped there. Is there any truth to that statement, Dave?
But from what I understand, yes, that as far as the interior of the house, I have no knowledge of that working. But I did hear on several occasions that the live track took it to the end of the driveway, and that's where they lost it. And usually that means they get into a car.
Now that's interesting too. That comment is exactly what Rachael just said. She said if it ends at the road, cold, whether it's at the bottom of the dog trail, bottom of the driveway, whatever, probably got into a vehicle or was thrown into a vehicle, right? Is that your take on this, you guys?
Yeah, and that's exactly what Dan was alluding to earlier when we
Yeah.
started the live about the different height of the vehicles and everything else. So I think we're kind of all on the same page right there.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it was telling about the cadaver dogs day one. They must have really suspected something foul or the possibility at least for them to have brought them out. There must have been something there to make them think that.
Now something happened at the road. That's where it's all looking, right? I mean, it stopped at the road, and Dave elaborates. He does elaborate a little bit, I think, in the next. He said, I think it got it. It means that somebody was thrown into a car, but he elaborates a little bit here where he's not saying stranger abduction. I don't think. Let's just continue the last. This is about a minute or so. Let's just take a look at this.
But again, if you look up, guys, if you look up where this house sits, and the possibility of a stranger abduction, it does not make sense at all. Only for the simple reason that you have to go. You're in a secluded area. Number one. Number two is that you have to come off of a main road to go down their road, only to go back a long driveway.
Right.
And again, if they're all sitting there and they're all there, the odds of that happening are, to me, are slim to none.
So see, he originally said it could mean that the person, the child, was thrown in a car, but then he elaborates and he says, you know what, given the circumstances of the situation, it's isolated, there's a long driveway. He actually doesn't say that he thinks it's a stranger abduction.
Right. Okay, let me throw this in there. All the dogs have lost the scent at the road, correct?
Yes.
What if, and this is thinking outside the box, and I'm sure Dan would kind of agree from his law enforcement. This is just outside the box thinking. I'm not speculating anything. What if she was put in a car at the house and the car drove out to the road and went left or right? The dog still would track that to the road.
To the road, would it track where the car went, or would it lose the scent?
I hate to keep saying our dogs, but we practiced that over and over. But if it's a long driveway, like he's saying, if they don't practice this regularly and certify however they do it, whatever, but on the hard surface, they would still track it down that driveway, because from the bits and pieces I saw from your videos is a dirt driveway, grass, whatever on
It's
the side.
gravel. It's gravel. Yeah.
So it would still hold a little bit of the odor,
Yeah.
but was she just thrown in a car and taken off and the dogs tracked her to the road and then just lost the odor? You know, that's something that you could also think about.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Dan, about that scenario where if someone was, and I'll give you a little insight before you answer, because I think I learned something today that may help you out, Dan, too, with your analysis of this case. I was talking to Don today, and it's been bothered. I don't like inconsistencies. Probably similar to law enforcement investigator, where if there's somebody telling one story, somebody telling another, you know there's a problem. There's a difference in the story, and I don't like that. And so I was talking to Don today. Again, out of the blue, I didn't think he would ever talk to me, and we talked for about 30 or 40 minutes. And one of the things I asked him in that 30 or 40 minutes was, what's the deal with the dog trail? You're saying dog trail. Dave Rader's saying the driveway. There's the problem with what happened at the road. He said, no. What I told the reporter, and this pulled it all together for me, you guys. He said, what I told the reporter was, I watched those dogs go down the dog trail. They did go down the dog trail, and then they went up the road a little bit, and the scent stopped at the driveway. So both stories are true. Dave Rader was correct. The scent stopped at the bottom of the driveway. She walked down the dog trail. If you believe Don, which talking to him today, since his story aligns with Dave Rader's, I tend to believe him on this, that she walked down the dog trail, and she walked about 100 feet or so up the road, and something happened at the base of the driveway.
So to me, you know, based on all the information, one of the things that bothers me, that I had asked, you know, because of the changing of the surface earlier, given the fact that she was barefoot, if that would make the scent stronger, it going cold like that, and the possibility of it her being put in a car and the dog's still able to track it, it makes more sense now to me that if she was put in a car, that they were able to track it down to the driveway and maybe lost it once the vehicle got up to speed on the roadway, and made the scent even less less likely for them to track. Now, one of the other scenarios that I had in my mind, but that would only be if the dogs were able to go down the driveway. If it did actually go down the path that Don says he saw the dogs, then I don't think a vehicle obviously could do that. And so it just kind of depends on how the dogs followed that scent. One of the other things that I thought of was that there was tree trimmers out there, and did Summer walk out? Could she hear them? Did she walk down that trail to get like a better vantage point of seeing what the noise was? Just curiosity. She's 5, and then an accident occur. We know that there was a guy named Randy who was speaking or that was talked about, and he ended up getting fired that day because he got fired because of an incident where he hit a guide wire. And I wonder if that's because of some sort of panic or something may have occurred if there was an accident and that happened at the roadway where they were doing the tree trimming, and they panicked and left. And it just so happens to be a Randy that is named somewhat closely related to this search that TBI did on Van Hill, who also did tree trimming. So not necessarily sure if it's connected yet. I know there's some debate there if it's the same Randy or not, but I digress on that. So to me, I wondered if those scenarios were plausible. But if the dog followed the roadway, then I think it's most likely that that she was in a car. If the dog didn't follow the roadway and went down the trail, and that's where the scent took it, then I think that she most likely walked down there, maybe perhaps to see what the tree trimmers are doing.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, Rachel and Butch, I know you guys haven't dived much into Summerwell's case. I've shared a little bit with you guys, but what Dan's talking about is on that day, there was a lot of activity. There were tree trimmers on the power line side. They were cutting a bunch of stuff. There was traffic going on. There was a lot of activity on June 15th. And when Candace, the mother, arrived home, she said that the daughter, the Summer, went into the basement, and there's a basement door that she could have walked out of. And if we're going to believe what the dogs are showing us, it's that whether she was grabbed outside the door or whatever, forget the scenario. The dogs are telling us that she went down the dog trail, down to the road, up the road, almost like she was walking along the road toward the driveway. Something happened at the driveway. Something happened at the base of the driveway, and that's where the dogs are telling us the scent disappeared.
Hence the higher vehicle snatch and grab. If I'm thinking back to what Dan was asking earlier about the higher up versus a car versus an SUV, and if it was a utility truck, a tree trimming truck, that would be very plausible. The dogs lose an odor quickly, because if it was a quick snatch and grab, where's the first place they're gonna toss somebody?
In the back of the vehicle or in their vehicle, right? Somebody just asked a quick question. I want to get this in front of you guys because this is a good one for we talked about this during training. How does weather affect a scent? And don't geek out too much, Butch. I know you like this kind of question. How does weather affect a scent?
Well, I won't get into all the barometric pressure and the scientific stuff of that, but wet weather, unless it's Niagara Falls extreme downpour.
We love it.
Yeah, we love it. And
The
like
water
people,
is good. Water is good, right?
oh my, yes.
Yeah.
That's like everybody says, well, I'll just run down a river or a stream or a creek or whatever to get away from your dogs. We're like, do it. The only thing you're doing is helping the dogs because you're keeping the scent hotter, fresher, longer.
Yes.
With all the moisture.
It clings to moisture, right? So if she did walk along the road, that's why the dog would probably go along the road, because it's clinging to like the vegetation along this. Right. Okay.
Chlorophyll in the plants and stuff like that. It's all liquid.
Yeah. Yeah. Water elevates the scent. Butterfly clutches Kisses just said that. Here's the thing about so back to Michelle After Dark. I have huge respect for her. I think I took the opportunity tonight because I knew she was wrong on the scent stopping at the road scenario. I'm just as a little like lighthearted dig at her, but she keeps saying, and she said to Dan too, she took a dig at Dan the other night and she said, you can't cherry pick. You can't ignore the footprints. You can't ignore the footprints. And for Michelle After Dark, her channel, she's done a ton of research on what community members have said about after this scenario where the dogs stopped at the driveway, right? And this is going to help you guys understand the context of this case, because she's right. You can't cherry pick. Any theory we come up with tonight has to take into account the fact that up the road. So here's the thing. I think we all agree something happened at the base of the driveway. Something happened with a vehicle or whatever. The scent changed. The dog changed behavior, and we know that something happened, whether she was thrown in a vehicle. The scent drastically changed, and the dogs lost it. So what Michelle's saying is, I think what Michelle struggles with is she doesn't like the abduction scenario because it means that the footprints don't make sense. The footprints are further into Ben Hill Road. If you go all the way up, and I'm not going to show you a map yet, but I'm just going to describe it to you. There's a property further up, maybe half a mile up the road. There's a guy, a neighbor named Fred Hill, and there's across the road, there's another neighbor named Gorley. His last name's Gorley. They had, according to neighbors, this doesn't come from law enforcement. Nothing at this point forward comes from law enforcement. It comes from neighbors saying, hey, you know what? They found footprints. They found Summers' footprints. There were searchers on my property and they found footprints. And what's strange about this whole thing is if you go into Ben Hill Road, which is a dead-end road, and you go up to this guy's Fred Hill's property and you turn right into the woods, the track of where neighbors said they were finding footprints goes kind of westerly. It goes west from Ben Hill. And what the reason I think Michelle doesn't like our discussion, the discussion Dan and I had the other night, was it promotes the idea that someone grabbed Summer at the base of the driveway and then sped out of Ben Hill Road, took off somewhere, God knows where, stranger abduction. I'm thinking it's not that scenario. And this may help Michelle tie together a vehicle incident with her footprints, because they didn't necessarily have to leave Ben Hill Road. They could have gone the other direction where the footprints started and all the evidence started, where somebody was carrying her apparently through the woods west from that further up in the road. And so I'm thinking that you guys saying there was what you're hearing from the evidence and your experience, there was a car incident that happened. It doesn't necessarily have to be an incident where there was a stranger abduction. It could be someone on that road who lived further up the road, had a car incident, and took her further up into Ben Hill.
Have they had HRD dogs on the property?
On Ben Hill Road, on 110 Ben Hill, where Summer lived?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we just covered. So that was the tracking down to the road and disappeared up the road.
Recently, like in the last 6-8 months.
Okay. See you, yeah. So you know how it works, right? What law enforcement does gives you insight into what probably the situation is. You're on the right track, Butch. So where do I want to go down here? There was additional searches in 2022 in the westerly direction I'm telling you about. That the tracks, they found Summer's footprints in this path, and I'll show you guys in a minute. Her path went through the woods toward what's called an area called Fields Road, west from Ben Hill, and they did a search in 2022 of guess where? Fields Road.
Okay, so the footprints that they found, they could have been from the day before, a couple of days before.
That's what I had said too.
Yeah.
How long do air scent or tracking, like how long would the scent stay with the footprints? Because I'm assuming, they would have brought the dogs over to those footprints. She's barefoot. That scent probably stays stronger than a person wearing shoes. My assumption only. I don't know that to be true or not. If they weren't able to pick up a scent, would that be an indication that those prints were old?
Yes. I've done Xena. Well, we've done it with your dogs too. 50 some hours. If somebody would take off, you give the dog a scent article and in a practice or training session, whatever, and they'd still find the person. And that is, like Rachel just now said to me, that's where an air scent dog is the best for that situation.
Yeah. I think this is the, let me make sure this is the clip. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a little more insight here. This is again from Michelle After Dark. And this is where she starts to really, I'll be honest with you guys. I think Michelle solved the first part of Summerwell's case with her focus of the footprints and the searches and where they ended up. You guys don't laugh at me. Come on. I think that she solved at least the path of the footprints and where they tried to hide Summer. I'm going to show you guys a little clip. I love it. I love you guys. Let me share this.
Those people don't know.
This is from Michelle After Dark. I think she's talking about, let's see real quick. And let me get my timestamp right. $10:12. Now, yeah, we'll talk about this after. Let me show you guys this real quick.
Already explained. Now, here's the thing. The scent dogs didn't stop there. We've heard from Fred Hill, a grandson of Ben Hill. This is Ben Hill, by the way, who the road is named after.
And just to help you guys out, so there's a lot to this case. There's a lot of little details. Fred Hill, if you look at this map, actually, this helps a lot. See the dog trail pin up there on the top? That's the dog trail we were talking about. Okay, that's Ben Hill. Ben Hill Road goes down, 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 and then where you see her big white hand that says Fred's Place.
Yeah.
That's what she's talking about. So at Fred's Place is the beginning of where the dogs started picking up later, not day one, not June 15th. We're talking about now we're going days into the case and they're coming back to the area and they're looking for additional evidence of where Summer went. And they picked up allegedly a scent alert at this location you're seeing right here near Fred's property. And then this little gap in the mountains becomes critical. And you'll see in a minute, see how she says footprints up here. There's someone traveling westward from Ben Hill making footprints along these properties. And this is how she explains. Let's see, how long is this? This is about a minute or two.
The time of Summer's disappearance, the Hill family had two properties, 165, 167, also down here 207. And he said that a dog picked up scent somewhere in this vicinity. I think it would have been on the Goalies land.
And I will share with you guys the Fred Hill person she's talking about. We've confirmed he's lied about a lot of things. He's commented on a lot of locals, made claims about things locals have done that we've confirmed have been false. So this Fred Hill character is not a reliable source. So he claimed there was a footprint on his property. I'm dismissing that because he's not a reliable source. This scent alert, however, see the location of the scent alert didn't only come from Fred Hill. It came from a YouTube channel that had been working with the PI, the Summer Wells parents' PI in the case. So I think this is reliable. I think they did have a scent alert on This is called Gorley. The property owner, his name is Gorley. I believe that. I believe there was a scent alert for Summer Wells on this property. So that's valid.
And are they using cadaver dogs for this?
Very
When
good
you
question,
in the
Rachel. Very good question. There's so many unknowns. People don't know if it's live or cadaver. Since they said scent alert, I'm thinking probably live, right?
Now, there's an interview though with Fred, and he's interviewed in January of 2023, so about 7 months afterwards. And this is where he talks about the scent dog, and he mentions it being a cadaver dog. Now, the one interesting thing I when I was listening to his conversation with Ziggy was that he immediately went to that there was animal bones on his property, that he had just found them. And so to me, I thought he was trying to explain why the cadaver dogs hit on his property up to his driveway, I believe is what he said as well. Because, you don't go from, oh, cadaver dogs hit here and I found some bones, on my property without trying, without obviously that being some sort of connection there. Now, I believe there was some cadaver dogs that were sent out there around that time, in December, January of 2022. I found an article that some kind of alluded to it. It didn't say the exact month. It said in the wintertime there. And to me, I thought that was interesting. So that scent stuff that he's talking about, I'm me personally, I'm not 100% sold on it that it's either real, one, or two, that it's as accurate as he's claimed, because he's changed his story after the fact. He said, no, it wasn't cadaver dogs. It was tracking dogs that were, following a scent there.
He admitted in a live when he was talking with the YouTuber that he ended up marrying. They do lives every now and then. Don't even ask Rachel and Butch. It's a crazy story. But anyway, he later admitted that he didn't know there was a difference. He didn't know there was two types of dogs. He called it a cadaver dog. He said, yeah, cadaver dogs hit on my driveway. And he didn't even know there was such a thing as live tracking. He didn't know there was a difference. So could have been live tracking, could have been cadaver. But I think the point that Dan's making, which is valid, is that he was telling a story about the dogs hitting on his property for some reason. And Dan's thinking like a criminal investigator, I think. Why would someone tell that story? You know what I mean? Why would they want people to think that the dog hit on his property? And I don't know.
Yeah, see, I don't buy that it wasn't a cadaver dog, because why would he go into it being dead bone or dead remains on his property as being an explanation?
Yeah.
Those two, going into it that quickly, that fast. For one, I thought the entire interview was staged, to be honest with you. She pulls up, he just so happens to be outside, and she's like, hey, do you remember when you passed by me on the road like 3 days ago? And he's like, oh yeah, that was you. Like, come on now. Like, this is so stupid. And I was like, bad acting for, across the board. And to me, I was like, well, what is the advantage of this staged interview? I see the advantage for Ziggy. She's making a name for herself. YouTube, there's drama behind it and building up the suspense. And hey, I did this. It doesn't necessarily mean that she had anything to do with anything nefarious, so to speak. But for me, for Fred, I was like, what's the advantage of this? What is he trying to get out? And there was like I said, a recent search with cadaver dogs. And I thought maybe he was concerned that information was going to come out, that cadaver dogs hit on his property. And so he decided he'd take advantage of getting in front of it and not only explain that it happened, but hey, look, I found these animal bones. So this is why. Nobody look at me, nobody blame me type of situation. But that's just my take.
And Rachel and Butch, I know you guys don't get into, I know your thing is not getting into the details of the case. You search, and we're kind of getting into those details. And I didn't want to tonight too much, but that's what Dan and I are diving into. Like, what's the motivation of being involved in this? The thing I'm getting to with this picture, and what Michelle's talking about, is Dan and I are definitely interested in Fred's motivation for telling that story. But for you guys, this scent alert, I think, was legit. This is where I think this is where the dog trail is, where the incident happened. Up here where my cursor is. You see my cursor? Probably not. The dog trail is where the car incident happened. And then law enforcement started focusing on where you see that scent alert pin.
Yes.
That's where they started focusing their dog searching. And Dave Rader actually told a story about, this is a little later, this is days after Summer went missing. They started finding footprints. Now, Michelle After Dark is 100% correct. Neighbors were reporting they were finding footprints, and they were getting scent alerts, and they were tracking. The dogs were identifying locations where Summer's scent, with a scent article, was picking up her footprints all along this ridge right here, all along the ridge to the left of the scent article. And let me just continue with how Michelle described this scenario. This will help you guys understand this whole days after. This is the days after Summer went missing, what was happening here.
And then on his own driveway, and went all the way up to a vehicle on his driveway. Look, Fred has said an awful lot. You can choose to believe Fred or not, but it's intriguing why he would say that. And then the footprints. We've known about the footprints since very early on in the case, because the owner of this land was talking on Facebook until people started attacking him, and then he took all his posts down, but not before people screenshotted. And I've got a lot of these screenshots.
Now pay attention to this. This is what the evidence she's using. Law enforcement isn't going to tell us where they found footprints.
No.
But Michelle After Dark got neighbors posting online confirming that law enforcement was on their property, identifying. You can see they're talking about finding. The dogs were scenting with I believe it was live tracking, I believe, because, well, am I right? Like, if they're looking for footprints, you're talking about live tracking, right? Yeah. Okay.
Part.
So that's they're still live tracking at this point.
Yes.
He was replying a lot. So I'm going to read just a couple of these. So this is Mr. Phillips talking. I was informed by deputies to make sure when I post anything, I explain it in full detail so there's no way anyone could misinterpret it. Oh, people will. People will. Someone got confused over me calling a footprint physical evidence and blew their phone lines up thinking it was new evidence. So I'm being very precise here. 2 footprints, child size, barefoot, not my kids' prints. 1 on my land, 1 on my neighbour's. That doesn't want their name or location mentioned. Well, it's Mary Sexton's land, who is Donwell's stepdad's sister. She's no longer alive. She died a couple of years back. So there were footprints on her land as well. If you watch my video from a couple of days ago, you'll hear an interview from the PIs who've been working on the case for a while. And they believe that the footprints are relevant to the investigation and the direction of travel. Now, I don't know whether footprints are leading this way or leading this way, but if they're leading out, I suspect Summer was taken, perhaps, I don't know, from Fred Hill's property, maybe, possibly.
No.
And led through the woods, so not going by the road, and then put in a vehicle at this point, somewhere around here. And this area is where searchers came back to again and again and again and again and again.
Now you see where she's circling, you guys?
Yeah, can you replay 20 seconds?
Yep.
And again and again and at this point, somewhere around here. And this area is where searchers came back to again and again and again and again.
And what might help you, Butch, too, is to understand that when Michelle first put the pins of these pins, she's got footprint there and footprint there. All she did was look up the property searches for this area and found the property owners. Let me show you this real quick, because this is really, really, really important. She randomly put those pins on. And I think this is going to help a whole lot with you guys understanding. And I want to ask you a question about your experience with footprint searching, footprint scenting, all that kind of stuff. But first, let me show you this real quick. This is the properties that she's talking about. This right here is Ben Hill, okay? This line right here is Ben Hill Road. This is where the scent started, the scent. And she even put the pin somewhere. It could be anywhere along this area. This is what I call, when I keep referring to the Gorley's property, this is where, so Summer's house is up here. Her scent starts to get picked up by dogs over here. And then it starts to follow the first footprint. When she says Mary Sexton, check this out. This is Mary Sexton's property. It's along the left side of Gorley's property. This is Mary Sexton's property. And that, okay. And the one she put near the road, she randomly put on the property. This is the property right here.
Okay.
Again, along Gorley's. And so my question to you guys is, have you been brought into this type of tracking down a missing child, looking for their footprints, using dogs to try to use a scent article and find footprints? Are you getting any insights here into what probably happened on this the few days after she disappeared?
My question would be, did anybody secure those footprints when they found them?
I think I saw somebody in the comments say something about it.
What was that, Rachel?
Oh, I was saying to him, I think I saw somebody in the comments saying something about securing or got like oh, I can't even think of the word. Where they put cement in it and
Oh, casting.
yeah.
Casting. Made castings of the footprints.
Yes.
Yeah, in that situation, okay, if I was on this search,
Yeah. Supposedly they did cast them.
what I would do is immediately secure the scene where the footprint was, bring in, I would call one of my other dogs in, a fresh dog.
Live find or tracking.
One of our dogs. It does both. I mean, that's what I said. But call one of our dogs in and put them on a footprint. Say find it. And then keep the other dog that's working, and then have the handler and the fresh dog go and see which way it goes.
From footprint to footprint. So you start at the next footprint, basically?
Yep, wherever they found that footprint and secured. Done that before too.
There was videos of Summer running around barefoot. That was a common occurrence, correct?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. And did I understand that correctly, that Mary Sexton is related to them?
Say that again? Sorry.
That Mary S. is related to Dawn, their family?
I didn't hear that. Did you pick up on that somewhere?
I thought I heard that's what Michelle After Dark said in that video. That happens to be Dawn's something.
Okay.
Maybe I was wrong, but if she is related and there's trails back there and she does run around barefoot and things of that nature, not saying you discredit the footprints at all, not saying that at all, but I wonder if those are prints that if she's just on her family's land and been running around back there, if that's a common occurrence for her to run around barefoot. It sounds like it is. I know I've seen a lot of videos of her running around barefoot and things like that outside, through the property and things like that. I know Dawn has mentioned it in interviews that she ran around barefoot a lot, that most people in that area that did, because it gets fairly warm. And if you wore, I think his excuse was if you wore socks and shoes, your feet got really, really soaking wet with sweat. And so I'm just curious if I understand that, there was a scent picked up and then there's footprints, but the footprints were found when was the scent that Fred is claiming that occurred? Because when he's talking about the scent, is he talking about during that day? Is he talking about 2 days later? Are the footprints found first and then the scent? Do we know the order in which those things were done?
The Fred claim about the hit on his property.
Yeah, because that's
so
the
that
scent.
one. Yeah, that one. I believe that one was a few days. Was very near where she went missing. The time frame of when she went missing, but I don't know if it was the day or a few days after.
And do you know when the footprints were found? Was that found that day?
So no. So the footprint very close to when she went missing, because Dave Rader described very clearly when he was coming in a few days after during, it was like the initial searches, and then a little while after, he was coming in late at night. I don't know if you remember that story. It was late at night and he got in, and they said they found those footprints that she's talking about, and it was very, very close to when they initially searched Summerwell's property. Very close to the same time frame.
Okay.
This, do we know, did they boots on the ground first, or did they secure the scene and run a dog first? Do we know that?
Sorry, say that again.
Did they do a hasty search with people with boots on the ground first, or did they call canine in first?
They did have canines in the first days.
Start people pounding the bush first.
Yeah, I mean, if you see the videos, Butch, if I could send you the videos, they had people shoulder to shoulder. They were doing massive, massive ground searches in those early days. They worked so hard in really crazy terrain too.
Well, I just wonder why. Well, it could be like a lot of places, even like up here. Why don't I just don't? This is something that I'm very adamant about. Is calling not just necessary, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit at Kernsville, that I would rather be called 5 minutes or be called out right away and canceled 5 minutes into the call than be called 5 hours later and try to go through that. Yeah, the dogs still do their job, but get us there, get us going, and then start doing your good searches, your hasty searches, and everything else. Because, how can I say that? If we're called to a search and a family member, I'm not saying anybody is, but there's disclaimer out there right away. We're thinking outside the box here, because I know over the years it's happened that a family member, they were actually, this didn't happen with me, but just different places I've gone to train and have done seminars and stuff like that out of state, that a family member was part of the search detail that abducted the individual. So
Yeah,
my point is, you see where I'm going with that?
I do.
So, yeah.
The thing is too, it wasn't just a family member in this situation. You've got an entire road. This Ben Hill, let me show you this. Let me show you guys this. This area of Ben Hill. Let's look at, I'm going to show you guys. This is Google Earth. All right. This is what we're talking about. So this is her house right over here. This is the driveway. This is whatever happened at the driveway. And then if you go into Ben Hill, let's just assume that the person didn't speed out and go off somewhere else. They went down Ben Hill. The scents that we're talking about started right here. Okay. And the searches we're talking about that Michelle After Dark keeps talking about is, and I interviewed a local. I interviewed a guy who lived right here, right in this area. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he admitted to me that the easiest way to get someone out of Ben Hill Road is to split the gap. And what that means is where it describes exactly where the scent alerts track where this person would have gone, in my opinion, where they went into Ben Hill. The scent alert was somewhere on this first property. Okay. You follow this. Let's say someone was creeping around the edges, right? Trying to get Summer the hell out of there before the searchers arrived. They had a 3-hour window. I don't know if I shared that with you, Butch.
No.
They had a 3-hour window before cops showed up. Okay. And now you consider this scenario where they're creeping around this guy's property. I don't think Gorley knows anything about this whole thing. I think they were trying to hide from Gorley. This is his property. This is the split the gap. So you're talking about where Michelle talks about the first footprint. It's the property around here. Okay.
Yes.
She threw her pin like somewhere over here, but nobody knows exactly where the footprint was found. But if you talk about the easiest way out of this area, there's the first footprint in this area right here. And then when you keep going, She had that other footprint way the hell over here. But like I told you before, I think that's a random drop. I don't think she knows where the footprint was. And the neighbor who talked about that footprint said it was behind the ridge where they couldn't see where the person would have been, which is over here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. They were headed in a westerly direction. They were clearly headed in a westerly direction over here in this area.
Right. And I apologize not looking at the camera. We actually have it up on the big screen so I can actually see
Good.
everything doing there.
Now, my first question for you, Butch, is I think one thing Dan mentioned earlier that's really important is you've got a child. Let's say you're called into a case where this child is always running around in the woods all the time. How do you differentiate between when you're asked to track a child in an area where she runs around in the woods all the time? Is it possible to differentiate? Can you differentiate between a fresh scent and old scents?
Yes, you can, without going into detail that I'll explain to you off air because I don't want to give any trade secrets.
Okay.
But like we talked about at Kerwinsville, yeah. I mean, and also I'd like to throw this out there. I mean, some people could take it derogatory that I was speaking of the sheriff's department. I was not, but I'm going to throw this out there. I'll extend an offer for a totally free seminar for the sheriff department to bring their canine to my seminar for 3 days this year. The only thing they have to pay for is their own room. So that way we can, work with them at no charge and teach them some of the things that we do. So maybe it will help their department.
It's very kind of you, Butch. However, you have experience with law enforcement down here. You know how protective they are of cases. Yeah. It's nice of you, though.
I don't want to even talk about cases. I want to offer them free seminar to come up so they can train. Yeah, through American Working Dog Association. And I will put the bill for that. All they have to do is pay for their room and board, and they can train with us, and we can, show them. And I'm not saying they don't know. So I know how internet warriors are. That how they can
learn different traits from
Yeah.
them, and they can possibly learn something new from
Exactly, and
us.
how they can do different surfaces. How we can show them about tracking the vehicles and such like that.
Yeah.
So it's up. The offer's there. I'm not saying they have to, but I just figured I'd extend that because thinking back, I was like, some people might think I was being sort of a jerk, but no.
I think so. The answer to the question is yes, it's possible with proper training.
Yeah.
To differentiate between old footprints and fresh footprints. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. With the
Okay.
There's a couple things with that scenario though. So just kind of playing out the scenario in my brain. To me, I think this is a crime of opportunity. So there's not a lot of planning that's going on. If this scenario were to go down, like let's just say somebody, either Fred or somebody back there. One is, why are they doing this extraneous route when law enforcement are going to be called here relatively soon, possibly any minute? I know you're going through the back area, but you're on foot. It's not the most feasible thing, especially if there's a lot of panic. And, this is a crime of opportunity, those type of things. It's not very feasible to have gone down this route. It's probably not the first thing that somebody comes to mind, especially in a situation where there's possible panic, anxiety, stress, and a bunch of other things that are going on, that you're mentioning. And so, I see, the footprints and I see all those things. I'm just, it's kind of not making a lot of sense in my mind of being reasonably plausible. And I'm struggling with that being an answer that they're going to go through the woods. What would be the purpose? Would it be to avoid the tree trimmers or avoid some cameras? They're popping out somewhere,
That's
they're going to
very good point, Dan. I think that I don't know. So I'm going to ask you a question too. As a civilian, we don't know what law enforcement is doing. We don't know what they know.
Right.
We don't have the case details. All we have to go on is what's publicly announced. So would you say that as a general public, as a layman, not involved in law enforcement, is the best way to understand the path of the investigation? Would it be to look at where they're searching next in the years following this case? Because it's been several years. So does that help us understand a little bit, do you think? If we know where they're searching, is that the path that the suspect potentially followed?
Was that towards me or towards?
Yeah, to you.
Okay.
How
Yeah.
to read
Yeah.
into law enforcement without actually knowing what they know. You know what I mean?
Right. So for me, like the most recent search that they did, I think it's very telling because of the amount of resources that they have put into it that costs quite a bit of money. The amount of agencies that went out there and their their cost across the board. Not to mention what testing that they're going to be doing. For those that aren't aware, there was apparently, I don't know how true this is, but some excavation type of work done. And it seems like there was a lot of dirt that was taken out of that area that was going to be tested for a number of things. And those things could take time, which costs money, resources, and things like that. I personally think also, knowing some of the, rules and laws, like if you had like, for instance, a situation where it was, somebody gave permission to dig up the yard and things like that. Would it have worked? Could they have gone out there and dug it up with just permission alone? Possibly, but if you're a law enforcement officer and you're utilizing this many agencies and you're going to go bring in the trucks and bring in everything else, because at any point somebody can refuse, you can bring in up all the trucks, bring in everything you want. They can, start one about to hit the shovel or whatever you want to, the backhoe. You know what? I don't want to do this no more. Get everybody out of here. Get off my property. And so you want to make sure that you can go in there and complete what you're going to do, especially if you're spending the resources to do it. So I assume they had a warrant to do that. And with a warrant requires probable cause. Probable cause requires some sort of proof of evidence. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's going to point in that direction. If you look at the Delphi case with Ron Logan, they got a search warrant for his property. He ended up being not the guy, but there was enough suspicion or probable cause there to do the search. And so with all those things put in play, I would assume they have something somewhat solid for them to have gone down that road.
I'm so glad you said that, because there's another piece. And again, I think I want to talk to you offline about this, because I don't know if you so in the years between when she went missing and this Van Hill search, there was another search that took place. It was around 2022. So this is only like February. She went missing in June. And let me show you this again real quick. This is the path we're talking about, right? Where the footprints were. So supposedly, if someone was headed in the westerly direction, this line right here that you see is called Bell Road, and it's very, very close. And there are paths, there are trails people can take to this other road that's known as Field Road. Very close. Like you can get through the woods in 8 minutes to get to this first Bell Road location, and then you can quickly cut across. You can cut across to Fields Road. And now just take this into account. I'm going to show you something interesting. I don't know if you and I have talked about this yet, Dan, and I want to dive deeper with you some of the details we know about this. But Fields Road comes into play in 2022, only about half a year after Summer went missing. And this event happened right here in 2022, where they conducted a search, another search. And again, that's why I was asking you, like, does this give us insight into what law enforcement is tracking? Again, the footprints drive in this direction, and all of a sudden there was this search in 2022.
What kind of search? Is it like an excavation search? Is this a ground search, cadaver dog search? What do you mean by search?
Good question. Here's a little snippet.
Breaking news at 4. For the first time in weeks, the agents of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation are combing through Hawkins County woods today during what they call a planned search for missing 6-year-old Summer Wells. The TBI tweeted the agency focused on what they call previously identified areas of interest. The small-scale search was one of many efforts to try to bring Summer home. Hawkins County Sheriff Ronnie Lawson revealed the search now involves 5 officers with the TBI and the Sheriff's Office. All this for Summer Wells. The Amber Alert still active today. If you have any information that could help authorities find her, call 1-800.
Okay, so that was the news alert on this. When we were first looking into the case in 2020, not long after the search happened, we tried to figure out like what's up with the Fields Road search area. That because again, I don't know what law enforcement knows. So we ended up digging a little bit into the prosecution, and we were able to confirm that it was Fields Road. Let me get my timestamp right real quick. 1519. I really think this will interest you, Dan. And again, we can talk more after about some of the details about this location. But this was fascinating to me. Share. All right, here we go. TBI website. And about a year later, almost actually a little less than a year later, on March 2nd, 2022, it looks like the TBI had visited this area, had done a search in this area. The reason I know this is that area is because I was able to find, you see this is 3-2, so they're in the area at least as of 3-2 doing searches. We recognize this big barn here as probably being, and this definitely the field that Jen was pointing to. This. So Butch and Rachael, you guys see how heavily they use dogs in these searches? Almost every single one I've seen, they're bringing in dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming like 6 months later, what kind of dogs do you think they're using at that point?
I already know what kind of dogs they're using. They're using HRD dogs.
They're HRD at that point, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
It's a, what this tells me is that this is something, in my opinion, very separate and different than what the recent search is. This to me is kind of crossing your T's and dotting your I's, making sure that you've crossed every bridge, so to speak. You did have footprints, out there. You don't know exactly when they were put. And so you're going to follow the trail in the direction that they went, just to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's. I don't necessarily believe that they have anything to do with each other. As far as the Van Hill search, which was much more law enforcement presence, including the FBI. And from what I understand now, I don't know how true this is, but it sounds like the search on Van Hill Road was started with a FBI tip. Now, I've heard that. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
But if that be the case, to me, like, again, going out there with cadaver dogs and stuff like that, you're making sure that she didn't continue walking in the direction that those footprints were, and that she didn't wander off. Those possibilities are still there. And so you need to cross your T's and dot your I's. I personally, at this point, but if there is some sort of connection there between that property and the persons that own Van Hill, then you might have something.
Yes. So Dan, you're hitting on. I'm fascinated by your comments here because you're confirming in a way your knowledge of how law enforcement would go from footprints, the direction of the footprints. In your opinion, they're going in the direction of the footprints, right? In this search,
I would agree.
Yeah. So they're crossing their T's, they're dotting their I's, they're going to the footprints. They didn't find anything. And your last comment really intrigues me, because it's unless there's a connection to one of the properties on either Bell Road or Fields Road to the Hill property that was recently searched, that's the only way you would connect the two searches, right? The path of the investigation.
Yeah, I would, if there's no connection there like that, I would assume that this was solely to rule out her wandering off as a possibility. Not necessarily rule out, but like make sure that that didn't happen. And if she did, if she got that far, if they could find something.
Okay. That's interesting. That is really interesting. Because there are a lot of properties in that area, and there's a lot of, let's say, relationship, family connections to all of these areas. If you go through Bell Road and Fields Road, and then you look at the Hill property, there are relationships. There are people connected, and there's a lot of them. So it's hard to know if this. Do you think that if it is connected? I have 1645. Let me play the rest, and then we'll field down here where you see this orange guy. And we found this. Actually, Ziggy on her live found this article, I think, that shows these pictures from the same time period. This is February 28th, so a few days, February 28th to March 2. They were searching throughout the whole area, and I completely recognize this right here because of this concrete structure that we passed that when we were driving on Fields Road. This right here is the field Jen was pointing across to the barn that she wanted to check out. So I was able to identify, we were definitely at Fields Road. We were definitely at this field that the TBI had been searching at least in early 2022. Okay, yeah, so it was just me confirming this is definitely Fields Road. And now we're getting into the area that I don't know. There are properties here of relationships of families that own properties out in this area who are connected to the Hill property. They're just relatives. Do you think that's relevant, Dan? If there are connections, do you think this could have been like an initial hiding spot before this last move?
Well, I'll say this one interesting aspect of it. If they are somewhat loosely related to the folks that had, or somehow related to the folks that had the Van Hill Road search, we know based off of comments from certain folks that they purchased a red truck from the owner of the property, and that TBI went and searched that truck a while ago. And so could it have been a part of that aspect? Could it have been part of that investigation into the red truck? Because it sounds like if they looked at the red truck and that red truck belonged to Paul Hill, who was the owner of the property on Van Hill Drive, so they must have had some sort of information in the very beginning that looked at pointed in that direction, and then for them to come back to it years later and search. If there's a connection there between Paul Hill and that property, maybe. I mean, it increases the possibility quite a bit, in my opinion, because that tells us that law enforcement was aware of something, maybe not something enough to prove anything, but they had something that pointed in the direction. And then 5 years later, they go out and search that property.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not impossible. I'll put it that way. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
And the thing is that I agree with you 100%, and I think that connection could help educate someone who doesn't have input into what law enforcement knows. If there's family connections, then there's the other search that I think I mentioned on our last live. One more search before the Van Hill search was the base of the driveway. And I actually have the family, the Wells family, published a Facebook post, I think it was. Facebook post of the search at the base of the house. And again, this is just trying to guess what law enforcement knows based on where they're searching throughout the years, where they're headed. And here's another interesting search. Was this one right here?
Ryan, before you do that, can I add two things to what
Yeah,
Dan was
please
talking
do.
about
Absolutely.
earlier?
Yep.
Okay, and he said about, and this will help people understand, and he was saying about probable cause and all that stuff. So what, in my mind, is I would assume, I don't know that they did it, but they probably ran a cadaver dog around that pickup truck for for an indication to lock in probable cause warrant. So I don't see how they would do it otherwise. So they're not going to tell us everything. So if the dog had an alert, or they're not going to get a warrant on interest, they'll have to get it on an alert for their probable cause. Now back to the excavation part. I agree with what Dan said. There's a lot more going on, and without going into specific detail here. The excavation part of it was, I guess, I don't want to say a facade, but that's what they need people to see. But there's a whole bunch of stuff also going on in the background that they're going to pay very close attention to now that the excavation was happening. There's going to be a huge attention to certain things, and I'm not going to get into it on the internet.
Oh well, we've got to it some. So toward the end of this, we're going to talk about the Van Hill search. I would love your insights, though. I know you don't want to give away trade secrets. I understand that. But it's something I think we should talk about as much as you're willing to. Before we get there, though, the Van Hill search, because I know that's the latest, biggest news. There was this additional before the Van Hill search, and this was the same year. This is 2025, and I think this is tied in, Dan, with. I really feel I've heard rumors that TBI put new eyes on the case, and we've had a dead period of a few years, and all of a sudden this happened where they're Don Wells, the family Facebook page, they said, "We'd like to thank TBI for calling us and asking if they could come look over the road below our house. Thank you for not forgetting our daughter, Sun Moon Utah Wells." July 3 of this year. It's like they're going back, isn't it?
That's one of the things that I said when we found out that they had looked at the truck beforehand. I had said that I think it was a live that we were on, or maybe it was when I was, shortly afterwards by myself. I've covered a couple of it, but what I had put on the air not too long ago was that if there was a search into these folks and there was eyes into it and they just kind of looked past it, and there's now another search later on, there's a good possibility that they have let somebody else look at the case and somebody else may have picked up on something, especially when you have a case where there's a lot of attention, a lot of tips and things like that. I mean, if you go back to the Delphi case, Richard Allen puts himself on the Mohan Bridge in the clothing at the time when the girls went, disappeared. Now, during that time, there was a lot of focal point on Keegan Kline and Ron Logan. And, Doug Carter, the state police there in Indiana, he had mentioned tentacles. And one of the things that I had told people about tentacles is tentacles have a lot of dead ends. They don't go anywhere. And so what he was talking about was that there was a lot of scenarios like Keegan Kline, Ron Logan, that maybe were the bigger focal point because they seemed like the right place to go, but they didn't really focus in on everything else, and something got buried in the depths of all the tips, and it was actually the person who committed the crime admitting that he was there at that time, in the clothing, the whole 9 yards. And had they gone and found that tip to begin with, that probably would have been handled a lot differently. I know they would have still had the obstacles of Keegan Kline and Ron Logan at that point that they would have had to have essentially clear in order to not have to deal with a third party culprit or suspect situation and during court. But in the end, I think that there's a good possibility if they are searching a property that they have already done some sort of investigation on, which, like I said, somebody said that they got that vehicle sold to them a while ago and that TBI had looked into it a long time ago. That being the case, I think somebody may have re-looked into something and maybe caught up something, maybe got, picked up a statement, maybe somebody said something that was small then, but given the evidence now makes a bigger difference. And that's what may have reignited that search out there. But it does sound like it was a tip. So I gotta, I gotta weigh it out evenly there.
That's a good point. It's like what led them to eventually Van Hill.
Yeah.
What was the initial search? Was the search earlier in the year at the base of the driveway? Was it related? And you bring up a good point. We don't really know because the Van Hill search could have been a completely separate tip that came in last minute from someone else. So that makes sense. But at least you're confirming that yes, the fact that they searched the base of the driveway, it does look like there's a fresh pair of eyes. They're going back to the original location years later. So that's really interesting. Where
Confirmation bias is real, and it happens even with law enforcement. And in a situation where you have some folks who look really good for committing the crime, especially with the information that you have, um, I can see where law enforcement can focus in on Dawn or Candace and say, hey, they did something, and that's the end of it. All the information that comes in, we're gonna just see it from that focal point. I have a saying, to a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
And so they might look at it from that direction and, getting fresh eyes on it, somebody who's not seen everything and thinking maybe, all right, well, is there a possibility that they aren't, responsible to that extent? If you want to argue negligence and stuff, sure thing. But if she wandered off, or if she wandered off and then got abducted, what evidence is there to say that that's a possibility? And when you open it, you go into it with those open eyes, sometimes you'll find some things.
I mean, that's fair. I wouldn't call it negligence because you look at people that are following Summer's case from day one, they like hone in on a theory and like this person's guilty, and they kind of throw out any evidence that just debunks that. It's that whole confirmation bias thing. I mean, police aren't immune to confirmation bias, right? They're gonna lead toward a suspect, and they really want to prove this suspect. So I wouldn't call it negligence either. But what I do want to dive into next, especially get your input on, Butch, as much as you're willing to share, is the final search. And that's the most recent one. That's the one everyone's talking about. And I really want to get you guys insight into what we know about what was on this farm, and what kind of searches probably took place using dogs, if dogs were used, probably were. This is the news article. This is the news report that came out. This was only a few weeks ago. This was last month. So this is the most recent update in the Summer Wells case.
Over the years. News Channel 11's Ansley Daniels spoke with TBI, who says the case is far from cold. Ansley?
Yeah, Sarah and Casey, there have been more questions than answers since Summer Wells disappeared from her home in Hawkins County on June 15th of 2021. But today, the TBI confirmed that their agents, along with the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, continue to investigate what happened to Summer. They say that last week.
That looks like the area we're looking at, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Recent. So what we did, I'm not going to play the whole thing because in this live, we were trying to figure out, nobody knew what property was searched at this point in time. And Jen and I started looking at property records. We looked at that whole, where this recent search took place. There was really only one property that it could have been. It was a big farm. And I looked up property records. I determined it was Paul Hill, who's related to a couple of people on Ben Hill, the original site of the disappearance. And then the news reporter went out to the area and confirmed that, yes, that's the area that was searched. She talked to neighbors, and neighbors told her that that it was the area, the property that was searched was owned by Paul Hill. And this was her post. Just real quick. It's going to show the property here, if I can find it. Confirmation from our latest. This was from WCYB news reporter. And this is the property. So this was back in 2021. We know this was a hog farm. They had like 600-pound hogs at the time. There's a whole lot more. I think Carrie Moody is kind of referencing some of the background too, that led people to this location, whether it was that PI or a different tip. They did a massive search here recently in the last month, and it used to be a hog farm. So my question, you guys are black. Is your camera turned off? Are you still there?
I don't hear 'em.
You guys still there?
They may have been using their phone. I don't know if their battery may have gone.
That's true. Because one thing I do know about this location, and one thing I want to ask them was the hogs thing.
I saw them mute on mute, so I think they're there.
Okay. You guys there? I know they live in an area that has really bad cell reception, but they were on Wi-Fi. What are your thoughts, Dan, on have you given any weight to the whole fact that it was a hog farm?
I mean, the fact that it was a hog farm, and I think there's been a lot of speculation whether or not somebody may have used hogs to dispose of the body. You know, I wonder if that's like, folklore, if that's something that's commonly known in those areas. And if so, if that be the case, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody from that area who is familiar with hog farms would have tried to utilize one to dispose of the remains. I mean, we got to think about the situation. Again, this is probably a crime of opportunity. This isn't something that, in my opinion, somebody planned out, stalked Summer and kidnapped her and had all this planned out. So there's probably a lot of immense stress, panic, and anxiety immediately after the incident that occurs. You've committed a crime, law enforcement, so now you got to dispose of the body as fast, as quickly as possible. You don't have time to lollygag, because at the end of the day, law enforcement or search team and everything else in between is going to be out there looking for her. She's going to be discovered as missing. People are going to try to find her, and people are going to start looking in that area. So if this person had access to the hog farm and was aware of that being a valuable way of disposing of a body, then I think it speaks volumes to the desperation that somebody may have gone to try to eliminate the situation. And so, it's not like, they may not have had time to go and get, certain things like, cylinder block cement things or a shovel to dig. And so they decided to
Use the
work as
hogs,
quickly
yeah.
as possible with the hogs.
Yeah, the biggest, and I'm telling you, I'm going to be thinking about what you said earlier a lot tonight, because I have been changing my theory based on this latest search and what we talked about earlier with the footprints, the path of it, and what you just said earlier is what I've been thinking, and I'm glad it helps me to get your confirmation that if there's a connection between that Bell Road, Fields Road search area and this new property, I'm going down the road. I'll be honest with everyone. She was hidden initially outside the search range. It was like a 5-mile radius that they searched, and then they were almost like chasing the culprit. Somebody tried to hide her in an area outside the initial search zone, and they found the footprints of the person trying to hide her. And then they searched the Fields Road area like 6 months later, but I think it was too late. I think they moved her by that point. And the question is, did they move her? Did they hide her there? Did they move her? And what was the transition of where she was hidden? Was there another place? And we know there's this new search. And then how does the search at the base of the driveway fit in? You know what I mean? Was there something happened at the base of the driveway? How do the footprints? And I'm going to give another shout out to Michelle After Dark. I think she's right. You can't cherry pick. The footprints have to play into any theory we come up with, because I do think the footprints were legit. So if we take the footprints as legit, then that would tell us someone went from Ben Hill Road through the gap to Bell and Fields Road area. We know they searched there. And that's where the trail ends until we see the search on this Hill family property.
How far is that walk from like, for instance, the trail started at Fred's house to where the Bell property is?
So what I took a drive with Andy Bernard, who's a neighbor over there. And when we were driving, you can see the video, I published it, and he literally said, he calls it splitting the gap. You go behind Gorley's, you split the gap. In like 8 minutes, you can get to Bell Road, and Bell Road's connected to Fields Road. So you're talking maybe 8 to 15 minutes to get through there. Yep.
But that's through it with a vehicle, right?
No, that's walking, man.
Walking.
That's walking. That's how quick you can get across to Bell and Fields Road, which is leaning me heavily towards she was hidden outside the search zone in the Fields Road area. And then I don't know what happened after that. I don't know what happened to her from Fields Road to where they've just recently searched. It's fascinating, but I don't know. But I do think that she was moved. I do think she was moved at least once, if not several times, based on all of this information.
I mean, it's possible. I struggle again with like the decision, which again, just because there's a smarter way of doing things, criminals are stupid. they don't always do the smartest thing, right? Obviously. And so I understand that, just because there's a smarter way of doing something doesn't necessarily mean that somebody didn't do something stupid. But my struggle with it is like, if you're putting yourself in the position of the offender in this scenario, are we assuming that if she's walking, then it wasn't an accident, then this was probably a sexually motivated crime, the abduction?
Oh man, I don't know. Can you make that assumption? I still feel like there's a possibility she was injured and they were carrying her, but that doesn't mean that's the correct theory. It could have been that she was abducted for that purpose that you're talking about. And then after the fact, maybe also she was injured and they needed to get rid of the evidence. I don't think what we know now can prove either way, honestly.
But if either of those scenarios are true and they cause some sort of injury, and all they found was footprints, they didn't find a drop of blood or anything else. And so it's interesting. To me, if I were to look at, for instance, somebody like Fred Hill, not necessarily Fred Hill, but someone like Fred Hill, he knows where the cameras are. There's some tree trimmers up in the front and he's aware of them. He was driving back and forth. So anybody else that may have been in that area could have been aware of those scenarios of the cameras, because I think he said that there was cameras there. So somebody would have had to have been aware of the cameras that were there as well to go through the decision to walk with an possibly injured child through the wilderness when there's a possibility of somebody going out there and searching. I wonder, like, if it would make it more feasible to just kind of put the child like in the trunk of a vehicle where, even though you're driving out of there at that time, unless his alibi was going to be also that he was just, at home and left his phone and everything else and decided to walk across because he was worried that somebody might see their vehicle. But that's a lot of forethought of thinking to do in a situation where it's a crime of opportunity and, you don't have the luxury of sitting there and starting to think, all right, is it a better idea to do this, a better idea to do that? He would be panicked. There'd be a lot of stress. There'd be some anxiety. He'd also be probably, if this was a sexually motivated crime, reliving what he was going through, being somehow relatively close to the crime when it occurred. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that scenario that I'm struggling with the fact that that the person would go, all right, well, let's now walk a certain amount of distance. I struggle with that. Now, if they are searching it because of another reason, maybe perhaps another tip, maybe perhaps something else did come out during their search, which pointed them in that direction. And there's a connection there between that residence and Van Hill. I do find that suspicious. So they don't necessarily need to walk there for there to be a connection, is also what I'm trying to say. Is maybe perhaps they have something more. Maybe perhaps they had cell phone data that now maybe looking at a different phone says, hey, you know what? This guy said he was here, but he's actually over here on this property. Let's search that property. And he owns a red truck, or there's this red truck that's loosely related to this person. Let's go and search that truck. We know that they sold it. And that's the preliminary part of your investigation there, because of the information you have at that time. Now, why it led 5 years later for the search at Van Hill, don't know. But
That's $1 million question, honestly.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you, I think. And some people are pointing out, so you may not be aware of this completely, but there's this split in this case on this road between there's a Fred Hill camp and there's a Andy Bernard camp. And some people are looking at Andy Bernard as like prime suspect, and some people are looking at Fred Hill as prime suspect. Some people look at the fact that he claimed the dogs hit on his property, proving that he's the one who took them through the woods, if the footprints are anything. Other people are looking at the fact, and Karen, there's a user here, Karen pointed out, it's true. Andy's family owns property on Fields Road, and they're focused on that as well. Obviously, Andy's the guy. And I'll be honest with you, man, I took Andy on a few searches, and no disrespect to Andy, he struggled to walk up a hill with me to find a cave at one point. I can't see him doing this. I can't see him walking that distance, carrying a child. He's a big guy. He's a big guy. Fred, on the other hand, and I'm not saying I think Fred did this. Fred is more physically capable, in my opinion. I personally am not saying that I think any of them are guilty or any of them are the person from Ben Hill that did this. I think there's probably other scenarios people haven't considered, other people who live on that road they haven't considered, who may have taken this route. And your question about why would they have taken this back route through the woods, that's a really good point. And you have to think about that. Why didn't they want people to see them going along Beach Creek? Why didn't they take the main road if it was a vehicle? Why didn't they just jump in the vehicle, put her in the back, take off? And that's the part that I think Michelle After Dark is saying, is that most likely didn't happen because we have to take the footprints into account. And I don't have the answer. All I know is something happened at the further driveway. Fact number one, we know that based on multiple statements from law enforcement and people who were there. Fact number two, there were footprints in the woods. So we need to piece this together, and probably not going to do it tonight, but we have these two facts now. Something happened at the further driveway, and then something else happened starting at Fred Hill's or Gorley's property, and someone potentially, most likely, took her through that gap, set her down a couple times, and was headed in that direction. The rest of this story, you and I are probably going to have more conversations and research and discuss, because I can't put it together from there to Van Hill. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And there's also the possibility that the search resulted in nothing on that one that occurred. Just like Ron Logan, they searched his property in the Delphi case, and he ended up not being the guy, and ended up not being something outside of the fact that the kids were found on his property. Outside of that, unrelated. And so
that's a good point.
So even with the Van Hill, it can still result in a nothing burger.
Yeah.
They may have something there to give them suspicion or reasonable belief that something may have occurred, that they have enough evidence to get a lawyer to sign off on a warrant to go and look. But signing off on a warrant to go and look and signing off on a warrant to arrest somebody are two different burdens of proof, and also two different burdens of two different situations, two different animals. You have to also get in this scenario, the district attorney on board with the evidence that you have, that they're going to be able to carry out, a court, and get a prosecution on here, a conviction. And so, a lot of scenarios fall into play for this one. I think for law enforcement to announce it, because it sounded like law enforcement openly said, yeah, we did a search. Now, in that one search over there years ago, did TBI announce that they did it, or was that just how did that information come about?
Which one?
The earlier one, the one that happened, a couple months after the disappearance, the one that you brought up right now on
the Fields Road one?
Fields Road, yes.
Yeah, so they announced it in the news, and the only reason anybody was able to figure out that it was Fields Road is because they shared the pictures in the news media, and we were able to see, like, we recognize the road, we recognize landmarks, and it's like, yeah, that's Fields Road. That's the only reason anybody knew.
But
They
law
didn't say it.
enforcement came out and indicated that they were doing the search there.
They
So
did. Yep. In 2022, February 2022.
See,
Yeah,
so
February
that tends to me to lead more to they had something, to go out there and say that, either that or they were coming under pressure because she wasn't found yet, and they're like, no, look, we're still doing something.
Yeah.
It's probably one of those two situations, whether if they're coming out to the media to say those things, and that's to say they may have found something, which, we look at the result there, nothing happened for several years. It may lead to, it was not anything significant. And, something not significant today doesn't mean that it won't be significant later with more information and more evidence. With the right amount of information, something can change.
Just a quick shout out. So Chill Billy's my buddy locally, and he's saying you're using way too much common sense for YouTube, just so you know.
Yeah, that's the name of my game. It's try to use common sense.
So I will say real quick, like I said earlier, we were at a tree ceremony for missing people in Kingsport. The family of Summer Wells, the parents of Summer Wells, showed up. And it was the first time I had an opportunity to talk to Don Wells. I was at some past events where we were nervous about approaching him because he seemed upset and angry, and I didn't want to bother him, and I didn't know if he was mad at us for covering her case. Today he walked up to me and he said, "Hey Ryan," shook my hand. We talked for about 30 to 40 minutes, and he said to me, this is the only family of any case we've covered we have not been able to talk to because of all the drama, and it's just been, we didn't know. Everyone suspects them. And he has said, we're welcome to go on their property. We're welcome to go talk to them anytime. And I want to make it clear to everyone here tonight, people have asked us often, do the Wells let us search? Do the Wells talk to us? And I've always had to say no, that they've just avoided us. And we have an opportunity to actually talk to them. And I think the approach we're going to take, I'm just going to put this out so everyone knows, is we are not going to, a lot of other channels use the Wells for clicks and views, and we don't believe in doing that with families of the missing. So anytime we talk to the Wells, it's going to be off camera, off record. Anything that they want to share with through our channel, I may or may not. It depends on what it is. I may record stuff, but most of it's going to be, honestly, Dave Rader said this, the only reason he ever talks to family when he searches is to help educate the search, where to go, where to look, what do you know about the victim, as far as did they know the woods well? You know what I mean? Like what would they have behaved like in the woods, and where would they have gone, and all that kind of stuff. So the only reason we would do this and talk to them would be off camera, off the record, to understand Summer a little better. But we're not going to use Dawn and Candace for clicks and views. We're not going to have them come up live on any lives at any point. But this is an opportunity, Dan. I think we actually have a relationship now with the parents of Summer, and they're willing to talk to us. So I think any information, any questions that you have for them, I think Dawn at least is willing to talk and answer questions. So we may have an opportunity here for a little more insight into Summer Wells and their whole family dynamic, which again goes back to Dr. What's her last name? Vona?
Dr. Vona, yes.
Dr. Vona, my first thought was, man, wouldn't she love the opportunity to be able to talk to Candace?
Yeah, I'm
To
sure
be
she
able to
would.
ask questions. So there could be an opportunity here, but I don't want to make it a big drama thing. I just want to get that insight from the parents, hopefully, and maybe that'll help us move forward with this case. So
Yeah, that's amazing, man. You know, to be honest with you, you know, I've worked with a lot of victim family members, some folks that have been, you know, targeted one way or another, just because there's not answers. And that's one of the things that I've kind of tried to explain to folks is when there's not answers, you know, people try to fill in the blanks with what they think they know. And sometimes if they fill it in with things that are wrong, then that magnifies how wrong they are in the end. You know, if you got something wrong in the beginning, it's only going to magnify how wrong you are in the end. And you know, in this case here, that's amazing that they're willing to talk to you. That speaks volumes to me. Did
yeah.
they, by any chance, give you any insight on what they thought about the Van Hill Road search?
You know, we didn't dive. I was careful today. We talked about the recent events with the whole bunch of CPS stuff that happened. There was a recent, they got cleared on the CPS stuff, and I really wanted to just build a relationship with Dawn. There was some drama that happened at the tree thing. There's not all agreement. Like, locals don't all get along around Dawn and Candace. Some people are closer to Candace, some people are closer to Dawn. We try to stay out of that. But there was some, we'll say, heated conversations at the tree thing. My conversation with Dawn was mostly, hey, look, we're not in this for clicks and views. I just want to talk. I just want to understand directly. I hear everything about Dawn and Candace through third parties, through other people. And I read people in person better than anything else. And I'd like to just be able to sit down with them, have a conversation, and just not a on camera conversation where he needs to feel like what he says is controlled and based on what needs to go out publicly. Just, I want to be able to see what he feels and Candace feels off camera. And that, as you know, I mean, I'm sure when you're questioning people, parents of a missing person, it's much better if they know that it's not going to be released out there to the public. It's private, right? They're going to tell more, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and you get an idea of who they are as a person and the words that they use and the type of things that maybe perhaps people look at. Like, for instance, I talked to Daniel Martell, the stepfather for Jack and Lily, and a lot of people question, like, in his interviews, because he says the word right a lot. And you know, and when we've done our interviews and stuff, it'll be like, yeah, so you know, this happened, right, and people are like, oh, he's trying to control the narrative. I don't think so, man, because when I talk about other stuff, like random things with him, he's talking in the same manner. He's like, yeah, you know, when I was doing this right and that right, and you know, you know, when you're doing this, you got to do it this way, right? And I was just like, yeah, you know, so it's just kind of who he is and how he talks. And I thought some of that with Dawn, in the sense where, like I mentioned, I immediately got, my jaw almost hit the floor when I heard him say something to the effect that he was carrying his daughter, and a couple of weeks later that, you know, something bad was going to happen to her. And then I continued to listen to what he was saying. Then there was a whole resurrection stuff, but I went into listening to what you know, how he talks. There's a podcast or a YouTube channel, Don, the Wells family, something. And in there, I, you know, started listening to what he was meaning about the resurrection stuff and things like that. And, you know, initially when I heard him say the resurrection, I immediately knew he was referring to like a religious type of thing. You know, but he clarified it, and he clarified it in what he was talking about. And, you know, it kind of gave me an understanding of where he was coming from in that sense of view. But yeah, you know, for him to come forward and still want to talk to people about the case kind of says something. You know, those that go quiet can be perceived a certain way because they no longer want to talk. Although, and I think I mentioned this to you before when I very first started talking about this, and I didn't know hardly anything about it. I said, You know, if somebody gets off the interwebs, like maybe Candace and Don, it could be, or, oh no, it's because of the comment, that the fact that they didn't want to comment. And I said it could be because they were on the internet and it didn't work out for them very well. And
Yes.
they have had an improvement in their life being off the internet,
Yeah.
and they would prefer it that way
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's what you just said earlier. Like, you recognized people you talk to who people automatically assume they're guilty. You recognize personality traits. People don't all have positive personality traits. Nobody's saying Candace and Dawn behave like angels. And so some of the things they do paint them in a terrible light. Some of the things they've done on YouTube, some of the things they've done on other channels when they're drinking, all of this stuff. And it paints this narrative of people take the things they say when they're drunk and angry. There's a lot of anger. I'll tell you that, Dan, right now. I picked up on that big time when I talked to them. There's a lot of anger. And it's related to how they were treated on YouTube. It's also related to DCS stuff. And the anger doesn't always come out in a healthy way. The anger didn't come out in a healthy way today. We had to take Dawn aside and we had to talk to him. Like, we understand you're angry about everything. And so it's that kind of thing where it's like people take the negative behavior, then they paint it into the narrative of guilt or innocence instead of understanding that everybody's got different personalities. They handle things maybe not always in the healthiest ways. And then just being able to sit down and talk to them, setting that all aside, all the drama, all the things that's causing the anger, and just talk about the case, talk about the child, right?
But that's also not uncommon. You know, when a person goes through emotional distress like that, whether it's a missing child, a death in the family, a marriage, divorce, breakup, those type of things, it's not uncommon for people to turn to crutches like alcohol and other things.
Right. Yeah.
And those things have an effect. And if you're coping with some of these mechanisms with alcohol or even narcotics and things of that nature, and you're dealing with a negative, what they're dealing with online, the negative presence there, it's only a natural response to want to defend yourself. You're missing your child, and then people are calling you, responsible for that child's death.
Yeah.
If that child is gone, which, after so many years, it's there's only a few options left here. But they're getting accused, they're getting all these things, mixing alcohol and stuff. It's not uncommon. I mean, people that have
Yeah.
gone through stress, whether it's, coming back from war or, like I mentioned, a divorce, a breakup. I mean, there have been people who have lost a girlfriend or boyfriend and have done extreme things like taking their own life because they couldn't handle the stress and things of that nature. And so, to look at somebody, in their most lowest point in life and judge them during that time is probably, it's not good either. That's why with me, I look at things like evidentiary and I try to just
Yep.
follow the evidence, because if not, I don't ever want to create a victim out of a tragedy, even more so. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? I think
100%. Yep.
that a lot of people do
Yeah.
that here. And one of the things that bothers me the most is like when I hear somebody say, well, their actions, because they were sad or they were depressed and they picked up the bottle or whatever. Well, they asked it for themselves. They brought it upon themselves. To me, when somebody says that somebody is, that they're pointing in their direction, and that even go to the extent of saying, well, even if they're innocent, I'm still going to say these things because they brought it upon themselves.
Mm.
That is no different than a person who assaults a woman and then say, well, she shouldn't have been wearing that. Or an abuser
Right.
hitting a woman
Yeah.
and saying, well, she shouldn't have talked back.
Yeah.
There's no difference there between those type of thinking and that mindset. And so, I just hope that people, put themselves in that scenario, because people make mistakes, people, and this is a big one. If their kids went missing, I mean, I understand that, but how many times, and I'm talking to the parents out here, but how many times have you gone to a store and then, you just turn around and for the brief moment your kid goes missing and you have that moment of panic and things like that, or you have to run around the store to find them and it takes 10 minutes. in that 10 minutes, if they ran into the wrong person at the right time, that story could have changed completely different. And then how would people look at you because you didn't have your eyes on your child for 24/7? Now,
Split
again,
second. Yeah.
again, I'm not saying that that's the case here with Candace and Dawn. I'm not there yet. I don't know what happened. I don't know, that Candace didn't do something nefarious. But
Right.
if it ends up coming out that way, that she didn't do anything, and if they found something at this Van Hill residence and somebody else gets arrested, I'm just curious about those that really looked at them and were the hardest towards them. If they're going to change their tune, or if they're going to come out saying, well, they did it to themselves. They put it out there. They drank. They did this. They did that. And if that's the case, and if that's the stuff that they put out in that moment, then that kind of tells you a little bit about their character too. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
true. I mean, you got to change your beliefs based on the evidence. I agree 100%. I'm gonna my bladder is killing me, so I'm just gonna tell you, I gotta close up pretty quick. Thank you, Lisa Mave, for the $2 donation. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. I did want to make a couple comments real quick. Yes, we knew about the land transfer to Fields Road Trust by not Andy's parents. That is the relationship I was talking about with family. Something that we're considering. Still open to the possibility. We don't take sides. We don't say Andy or Fred are innocent or guilty 100%. The evidence should drive where you go. So yes, that's important based on recent evidence. We're taking that into account. Someone said maybe Don saw he could fool Ryan like he has others. Maybe. But I do know, if you guys have been with our channel for a long time, we're very similar to the way that Dan described. And that's why I love Dan's audience too, because we take the same approach. You can't really fool someone who uses evidence. If you tell them information, someone who uses evidence is going to check that information. You don't just believe something because someone tells you. So does he think he can fool us? I don't think I think if he's been watching our channel, he knows it's probably not the case. That's why we're not doing this to go live with him on YouTube every night and show him drunk or saying all kinds of crazy stuff. We would love to talk to them, just like we talk to other victims, families, other family members. They're the only family we've never been able to actually talk to get information about the missing person. And it's nice to be able to close that loop with the final family, the final case we've taken on with Summerwells. We can actually communicate with the family now, which is fantastic. So I don't know. Does he think it could fool us? Maybe, but that's not how it works on our channel. It's not how it works on Don's channel. So we're just going to take information that we get and work with that and try to cover this case. And I want to tell you, Dan, I'm serious. Like when you and I first started communicating, I just felt like there's a lot of channels out there who cover true crime, and some of them tend not to they'll take certain evidence and no disrespect to Michelle, but like some evidence that she'll take as like, for example, Fred saying that a dog hit on his property, or even public Facebook posts. Some channels are a little more discerning of the evidence they'll take in before they say something is true. And what I liked about your channel, and I watched a bunch of your videos, is that you're very much like, okay, is this true? Let's look at the evidence, and enough pieces of evidence, multiple sources, anything, law enforcement saying something. If it proves it, then you take that and you put that into your truth bucket. So I appreciate that, and I think that's why I really appreciate kind of talking over the case with you. I think we think the same way, so it's been awesome. Appreciate your time here tonight. Any last words for everyone on this case?
I just really appreciate you having me on. I want to thank the dog handlers as well for being on earlier. They were a wealth of information. I'd love to do more interviews with them. I've been covering the Jack and Lily case, and there's some footprints and dogs in that search too that I'd have many of questions for them about that I would love to have you on. I know you covered that case as well, right?
Which one?
Jack and Lily Sullivan out of Nova Scotia, Canada.
I've been talking to other YouTubers who cover it. Again, we do a lot of local cases. We've started branching out to other cases, and that may be one. We just recently started researching Michael Vaughn, and Jack and Lily is definitely one we want to start getting into too. So I may need to ask you for help catching up on that case, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to help you out with that, and I'd love to have you again on my channel, also the dog searchers, and maybe some more. Uh, I just love the conversation. I think it's been great, and thank you for
Awesome.
having me, and thank you guys for watching. You guys are great mods, members, subscribers on both channels. You guys are amazing. You rock. Thank you guys.
Yeah, our mods are doing a great job. And I will say one last thing: the Dr. Vona.
Uh-huh.
I do want to do. I've been collecting clips of interviews at the wells. I would love to do our next video. I would love to do another one with her to cover those clips. If you're open to it, it can be on your
Yeah.
channel or mine. I don't mind either way. But if you're open to that, I'd love that to be our next one.
Let's do it. I'll talk to her. And I just talked to her last night about going live and stuff like that. So yeah. And
Awesome.
and she's you know, me and her actually, well, we don't disagree on the Jack and Lily case. You know, she thinks that, you know, Daniel is um what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of red flags there, which I see all the completely. To me, I don't necessarily believe what Daniel tells me. I believe what RCMP has put out there, and they put out an extensive amount of documents without the evidence that's out there. It just so happens that the end result kind of align with what Daniel is saying. And so it's not that I believe Daniel, it's more that I believe what RCMP and what the investigation
Yeah.
led, and my understanding of the investigation of what they should have found had there been something there. And so but you know, she'll if she don't agree, she'll tell you. She doesn't
There's,
just want
there's nothing interesting about a panel of people agreeing on everything anyway. So you know what? It makes a
Exactly.
good conversation, right?
Exactly. So it'll be great. Yeah, I'll talk to her, and I'll put us all in a 3-way message group, and we'll get going from there.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Dan, so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Looking forward
Thank
to our
you.
next one.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great night. I'm out.
All right.
Peace.
Talk to you later. All right. Thanks, everyone. This was a amazing conversation. Like I said, I wanted to kind of mention to you all that we are finally connected with the Wells. Dawn was surprisingly open to having a conversation with me. I thought they were angry with us. I thought they didn't like the fact that we were searching, but he was open to it. And so he gave me his number. We can text now. There's not going to be any use of the Wells for clicks and views on this channel. It's going to be a conversation with the Wells for the purpose of understanding everything. So if Dawn and Candace are watching, thank you for being willing to talk to us. Candace, if you're angry with us about the interview we did, I think that's probably why you're a little bit angry with us. They interviewed your friend who said she thought you were a liar and manipulative. Please understand those were her words. They're not ours. We don't feel that way about you. Jennifer loved talking to you today at the tree ceremony. So I want to thank you guys for being open to talking to us. Thank you so much to the mods tonight. You guys were fantastic. We didn't really have a whole lot of trolls, I don't think. This was so informative. I'm sorry we lost the canine, our beautiful canine friends, our canine experts. We love those guys. They're helping us train Moon, and we're going to have them on again, I'm sure, sometime. Love you all. Thank you all for spending time with us tonight. Hopefully you will join us next time. Love you all. Appreciate you all, and have a fantastic weekend. Love you. Bye-bye.